Chapter 1913. The students were also shocked by Yan Xiaoyi's sudden collapse. Tong Ziqing was the first to react. I'll go to the sky room to look for Lord Ghost Doctor. I'll go. Yiqing Luo took a look at Yan Xiaoyi's pale face and suddenly recalled the blood which she had come into contact with before she entered the godless array. The blood was also tainted with the poison of the godless island. It was likely that Yan Xiaoyi had already been poisoned since then. It was just that he was afraid that Xiao Jin would be worried, so he suppressed it and did not reveal it. And when she rushed to the battle dimension, she was wholeheartedly thinking about solving their relationship problems, so she didn't notice Yan Xiaoyi's physical problems. The poison that Yan Xiaoyi was inflicted with should be the ultimate poison of Godless Island. Moreover, the poison in Yan Xiaoyi's body and the poison in Xiao Jin's body were on a completely different level. The 100 dispelling pill that she had refined had cured the poison in Xiao Jin's body, but had not been able to clear the poison in Yan Xiaoyi's body. Looks like this poison can only be cured by Master Ghost Doctor. Yiqing Luo turned her head toward Shi Ruoyu, can I trouble you to prepare a room for Xiao Yi? I'll bring Master Ghost Doctor over immediately. As she finished speaking, she summoned Shiju and leaped onto Shiju's back before shouting, let's go. Shiju turned into a black afterimage, vanishing before everyone's eyes. Shiju's speed was extremely fast. In just a short moment, he had already arrived at the first room. Yiqing Luo's speed was much faster than the devil-class students who had rushed back to report. And because of this, the few devil-class students who were surrounding the sky room number 1, as well as the students and elders from the various academies, all saw a huge black panther beast descending from the sky. The woman in red was sitting on the leopard. They were all shocked. These 2 days, Yan Xiaoyi had been kidnapped at Jubao Pavilion, and Xiao Jin had disappeared soon after. After that, Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian went searching for Yan Xiaoyi, but they didn't manage to catch a glimpse of them. Almost the entire South Billow continent was turning upside down in search of them. Madame Qing Luo. It's Madame Qing Luo. The students of the devil class stepped forward to welcome them. Before he could express his joy, he heard Yiqing Luo asking anxiously, where's Ghost Doctor Master? Is Madame Qing Luo hurt? Lord Ghost Doctor is refining medicine in the medicine refining room. Madame Qing Luo, you. Before they could finish their words. Suddenly, a hurricane appeared in front of him, blowing sand into his face. They hurriedly raised their arms to cover their faces. But when the hurricane subsided, there was no sign of Yiqing Luo at all. The students were all stunned as they recalled Yiqing Luo's earlier question. Could it be that someone was injured? Continue treating the Ghost Doctor? On the other side, Yiqing Luo hurriedly rushed towards the main courtyard's alchemy room. Outside the alchemy room, there were more than 30 alchemy apprentices in cyan robes. The vice principal was standing at the side, talking to a gloomy-looking old man about something. It seemed like they were having a quarrel. The huge black leopard attracted everyone's attention. Vice President's gaze fell from the leopard beast onto Yiqing Luo. His eyes were filled with joy as he said, Little Luo. You're finally back. Yiqing Luo leapt down from Xian's back as she took quick steps towards Vice President, stopping him from continuing with the conventional greetings, Vice President, where is my master? I need to talk to him about something urgent. Before the Vice President could say anything, the gloomy-looking old man by the side gave her an extremely disdainful look, you're that Ghost Doctor's disciple? Your aptitude isn't that great, I thought this so-called Ghost Doctor's foresight was really good. That weird tone made Yiqing Luo's slender brows suddenly creased. Star. Chapter 1914. Vice President saw the change in Yiqing Luo's expression and immediately laughed dryly as he pulled the elderly man away. Following that, he put on a smile as he looked at Yiqing Luo. Ghost Doctor is in the pill refining room and has already been here for an entire day. Yi Qing Luo nodded her head and directly walked towards the direction of the pill refining room. The vice dean immediately stopped her. Girl, even though you're the ghost doctor's disciple, but, before the ghost doctor went in, he specifically warned us that no one is allowed to go in and disturb him while he's refining pills. He paused and revealed a troubled look. You should also know your master's personality. I know. Yi Qing Luo pushed away the vice president's hand. Xiao Yi is injured. Vice President was stunned as he recalled that the reason why Yi Qing Luo had disappeared for the past 2 days was to look for the kidnapped Yan Xiao Yi. He retracted his hand and didn't stop her. Don't think that just because you're that ghost doctor's disciple, you can enter the medicine refining room. That ghost doctor's style is really big. In someone else's territory, she dares to chase away the owner and forcibly occupy the medicine refining room. This is the first time I've seen such a shameless medicine master. The old man next to him spoke in a strange tone. His face was full of contempt and disdain. Yi Qing Luo's footsteps paused. She glanced sideways at the old man coldly and the corners of her lips curled into a cold smile. An apothecary at the level of a medicine ancestor? When the old man heard this, a smug look appeared on his face. You've heard of this old man's name? That's right, I am the only master apothecary at the medicine grandmaster level in the headquarters. You can call me Master Yao Lao. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled up slightly as her eyes were filled with ridicule. What a coincidence, my master is also an elder-level alchemist. Yao Lao was slightly stunned, not understanding the meaning of Yi Qing Luo's words. The next moment, Yi Qing Luo's chilly voice cleared his doubts. Unfortunately, in a situation where both of us are at the same level, you are not even comparable to a single finger of my master. To think that you have the title of a medicinal grandmaster, it's just an empty shell. Leaving this sentence behind, Yi Qing Luo headed towards the direction of the pill refining room without even turning her head back. No matter how Yao Lao cursed at her from behind, Yi Qing Luo couldn't be bothered with him. He didn't know how long the poison in Xiao Yi's body would last. She did not have the time to waste with Yao Lao here. If it wasn't for Yao Lao constantly insulting his master ghost doctor, she didn't even want to pay attention to it. Yao Lao took some time before he understood the meaning behind Yi Qing Luo's words. His old face instantly turned steely green as he clenched his teeth and rolled up his sleeves, wanting to settle the score with Yi Qing Luo. Vice President stopped Yao Lao, but he had no choice but to admit Yi Qing Luo's words. They were both medicine grandmasters. However, the ghost doctor's name had spread far and wide. She was even called the Ghost Hand Doctor. It could be said that if it wasn't for the fact that Yi Qing Luo had mentioned that Ghost Doctor was merely an elder level, he probably thought that the Ghost Doctor was either a medicine emperor or a medicine immortal. Looking at the medicine faction's alchemists, whom they had always been proud of, their faces were twisted with jealousy. The vice president sighed helplessly. Yi Qing Luo walked directly into the pill refining room without any restraint. The surrounding alchemists looked at each other in dismay, but due to Yi Qing Luo's imposing manner, they didn't dare to stop her. The ghost doctor stayed in the medicine refining room for a day. At least 3 people had been forcefully thrown out by the ghost doctor. This young lady actually dared to barge in? The junior alchemists were all guessing when Yi Qing Luo would be thrown out by that emotionally unstable ghost doctor. The junior alchemists specially stood on the left and right sides, leaving an empty space in front of the door. But after waiting for some time, that tightly shut door didn't open at all. Star. Chapter 1915. The pill refinement room was filled with smoke. A huge cauldron floated in midair, and a raging fire burned below it. A white-robed figure with disheveled hair stood under the cauldron. Yi Qing Luo took a look at the burning cauldron as she pursed her pink lips. Ghost Doctor Master. The ghost doctor didn't seem to hear her voice, and didn't turn around. At this time, the concoction of the elixir had already reached the latter part. With the ghost doctor's abilities, there was no need for her to guard the cauldron at all times. Ghost Doctor ignored her and Yiqing Luo knew that he was annoyed with her. She had only just recovered, yet she had already put herself in danger. Yiqing Luo's tone softened as she slowly walked to Ghost Doctor's side, raising her head together with him as she looked at the cultivation furnace. Master Ghost Doctor, the people from Godless Island have attacked me. Yiqing Luo explained the reason for her disappearance for 2 days. The Ghost Doctor's body stiffened. Yiqing Luo stood very close to him and could feel the change in Ghost Doctor's breathing. He heard her voice. Yiqing Luo's hand slowly hugged his arm, as her voice was a little soft. Ghost Doctor Master, I've been with Xian for the past 2 days, not leaving him by even half a step. I also didn't rely on the fact that you've treated all my injuries, to act recklessly and recklessly. The Ghost Doctor's body stiffened. As though he was extremely unnatural and not used to Yiqing Luo's nearness. Master Ghost Doctor, look at how cute and adorable I am trying to please you. Can you help me, please? Yiqing Luo hugged Ghost Doctor's arm and started shaking it. The Ghost Doctor truly doted on her. She also believed that the Ghost Doctor would not ignore the students of Devil class. Otherwise, with the Ghost Doctor's personality, he would have long wished to return to the West Continent, return to his own medicine refining room, and live his life of refining medicine. How could he possibly remain on the South Waves continent? He stayed behind because he wasn't sure if the missing Yiqing Luo and the others had met with any danger. When Yiqing Luo and the others returned, they could treat them at the first instance. Yiqing Luo had long seen through Ghost Doctor's cold on the outside but warm on the inside. As expected, towards Yiqing Luo's act of acting cute, Ghost Doctor ultimately couldn't stand it. Under Yiqing Luo's reluctance, she was dragged out of the pill refining room. The door opened. Plop 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 sounds could be heard. The 30 or so young alchemists were lying on the ground. On seeing that it wasn't only Yiqing Luo who walked out, Ghost Doctor was with her. The junior medicine masters were so scared that they trembled and knelt on the ground. Lord Ghost Doctor, they had thought that eavesdropping and peeking at the Ghost Doctor refining medicine would definitely anger the Ghost Doctor, who had a violent temper and would throw people out of the refining room at the slightest provocation. In the past, when they peeped at Yao Lao refining medicine, they would be punished by Yao Lao when they were discovered. However, the Ghost Doctor didn't even look at them. He walked straight past them and into the front yard. Just as the junior apothecaries were feeling extremely perturbed, they saw the beautiful girl beside the Ghost Doctor reveal a devastatingly beautiful smile at them. There are still pills refined by my master in the medicine refinement room. Take a good look. Once the refinement is successful, these pills will be a gift from my master to you young alchemists. After saying that, he turned his head and bade farewell to the Vice Dean, then pulled the Ghost Doctor onto Shiju's back and swaggered off. The eyes of the young alchemists lit up. A gift from the Ghost Doctor? Not only did the Ghost Doctor not punish them, he even gave them a gift. The junior apothecaries flocked as they rushed into the pill refining room. Chapter 1916. Yao Lao's undignified look made Vice President frown slightly. Yao Lao even rolled up his sleeves and was about to rush into the pill refining room to chase those junior alchemists out. Vice President had no choice but to stop Yao Lao's extreme actions. How could he not tell that Yiqing Luo was intentionally pulling aggro for Yao Lao? Yao Lao was the only grandmaster in the main courtyard's pill refining room. These junior alchemists were under his control. Yiqing Luo's actions earlier had completely succeeded in making those junior alchemists extremely dissatisfied with Yao Lao. If Yao Lao were to go in and chase them out at this moment, and stop them from taking Ghost Doctor's gift, it would probably cause those young junior alchemists to have a strong backlash. By then, Yao Lao would really lose the hearts of those junior alchemists. However, Vice President couldn't blame Yiqing Luo for doing this. After all, Yao Lao's actions today indeed didn't seem like something a Grandmaster Alchemist should do. He sighed softly and tried to persuade Yao Lao in every possible way before he managed to persuade him. Yiqing Luo was on Shiju's back as she explained Yan Xiaoyi's current symptoms and her guess towards the poison. Hence when they reached treasure-gathering pavilion, Ghost Doctor went directly to Yan Xiaoyi's room to take her pulse. Luckily, after Yan Xiaoyi was poisoned, she had swallowed Yiqing Luo's 100 dispelling pill which suppressed a portion of the poison. Following that, a portion of the poison was removed by a mysterious force. Now the remaining poison in Yan Xiaoyi's body wasn't much. Mentioning that mysterious force, Yiqing Luo subconsciously took a look at Xiao Jin. The force which was able to remove a portion of the poison should be that golden ray which was brought out when Xiao Jin released his golden eye's energy. Moreover, they were now in treasure-gathering pavilion. What kind of place was treasure-gathering pavilion? They had all kinds of rare and precious medicinal herbs. With Ghost Doctor's help, there were all kinds of medicinal herbs. The poison in Yan Xiaoyi's body wasn't considered as serious. Hearing this news, everyone in Devil class heaved a sigh of relief as their suspenseful hearts were all put down. Taking a look at Ghost Doctor who was performing acupuncture, Yiqing Luo stood up and quietly dispersed the surrounding students. 50 over people left the room. Yiqing Luo took a look at Shi Ruoyu and smiled lightly. Tonight Ruoyu will be booking a banquet at Floating Fragrance Restaurant, everyone don't forget. The Ghost Doctor had personally said that Yan Xiaoyi was fine. Yiqing Luo also didn't wish for all the students to be like her, constantly tensed up in emotions. These 2 days, the 4 of them had gone missing, and then they were busy taking care of Yan Xiaoyi. It was time to relax. Sure enough, when he heard that there was a feast to eat tonight, he was startled. The eyes of the young student sparkled with excitement. Yiqing Luo asked them to go down first to tidy herself up. Piao Xiang Restaurant was the largest restaurant in Gufeng City. If they wanted to book a restaurant for a meal, even if they didn't have to be extravagant, they had to at least be dressed neatly. The students cheered and dispersed to prepare to bathe, change their clothes, and wait for the feast. Yiqing Luo's charming eyes were filled with smiles as she sent the students off with her eyes before she looked at Shi Ruoyu with a light smile. Ruoyu, I have something to discuss with you, is it convenient? Shi Ruoyu seemed to have guessed that Yiqing Luo would look for him for a private talk as he nodded slightly. I've already prepared the pantry, you can go over any time. Yiqing Luo smiled as she held Dmo Xian's hand and followed behind Shi Ruoyu, heading towards the direction of the tea room. Yiqing Luo looked at the surroundings as she suppressed her voice. Has Yuming left? Ever since they came out from the sundry room, Yuming had automatically disappeared. Yiqing Luo only agreed to bring him back to Nirvana realm. As for what Yuming wanted to do after that, Yiqing Luo didn't have the mood to bother. Only, Yuming had left silently. Could it be that he was plotting something in the dark? Star. Chapter 1917. Dmo Xian hugged her tightly and saw the worry on her face as he consoled her calmly. He won't be able to stir up any big waves. Moreover, pausing for a moment, Dmo Xian seemed to be organizing his words. After some time, he opened his mouth. He is a heartbroken person. Perhaps not long later, he will come back and look for you. Yiqing Luo recalled the scene of Yuming and Yunu's conversation in the mirror. Indeed, it was heartbreaking. With Dmo Xian's words, she didn't think any further as her vision fell onto Shi Ruoyu who was leading the way. The 3 of them went to the pantry. The 2 of them sat down and Shi Ruoyu sat opposite them. I won't beat around the bush. Ruoyu, can you tell me, which powerhouse is the mysterious powerhouse behind treasure-gathering pavilion? Yiqing Luo asked directly. No matter how tactful she was. Based on Shi Ruoyu's intelligence, he must have guessed that she would ask this question. Indeed, Shi Ruoyu's face didn't reveal any astonished expression, as though it was within his expectations. His handsome face revealed a tinge of guilt. As the eldest young master of the Shi family, I can't divulge any secrets of treasure-gathering pavilion. Yiqing Luo was already mentally prepared for this. After all, Treasure Gathering Pavilion was the #1 auction house in the South Continent. As the Shi family's powerhouse on the surface, Shi family could rest assured to hand over the auction house's matters to a 17 or 18-year-old Shi Ruoyu to handle. This was enough to prove Shi Ruoyu's ability and means. Shi Ruoyu wasn't that kind of hot-blooded youngster. He wouldn't do anything for his brothers or for the sake of friendship. Naturally, he wouldn't reveal the mysterious powerhouse behind Treasure Gathering Pavilion. As for the powerhouse behind Treasure Gathering Pavilion, Yiqing Luo already had an answer in her heart. But she wanted to confirm one last time. After all, this concerned her and her brother's safety. Looking at Yiqing Luo's worried expression, Shi Ruoyu clenched his fists and continued, "But as brothers, I can give you some simple hints." Yiqing Luo suddenly raised her eyes and fixed her gaze on Shi Ruoyu, then. "I'll ask my guess, you only need to nod or shake your head, how about that?" Shi Ruoyu smiled as he nodded. Yiqing Luoyu directly asked her initial suspicion, "The powerhouse behind Treasure Gathering Pavilion, is Shi Shanglan?" Shi Ruoyu was stunned and nodded after a while. As though he had not expected Yiqing Luo to be able to guess it accurately. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes and asked again, "Moreover, that Shi Shanglan is actually not the real Shi family's young master. He's the young master of Godless Island." When Yiqing Luo's words landed, Shi Ruoyu stood up with a thump. The force was so great that even the chair he was sitting on was knocked over. He was totally unaware as his eyes opened wide, looking at Yiqing Luo in disbelief. After all, a child was still a child. No matter how smart he was. No matter how capable he was. After all, he had experienced too little. Shi Ruoyu's expression confirmed that Yiqing Luo's guess was completely correct. Yiqing Luo's eyes turned slightly cold as she met Shi Ruoyu's eyes without blinking. Her voice was suppressed as it revealed a trace of bewitchment, which is to say, the powerhouse behind Treasure Gathering Pavilion is Godless Island. Yan Xiaoyi could be kidnapped in front of everyone in Jubao Pavilion. Later, the guests found out and informed Shi Ruoyu. But during the kidnapping, why didn't anyone inform Shi Ruoyu? There was only one explanation. Even if someone kidnapped Yan Xiaoyi in front of everyone, in the eyes of outsiders, it didn't look like a kidnapping. Star. Chapter 1918. But later on, after Yan Xiaoyi, Yiqing Luo and the other two disappeared from Treasure Gathering Pavilion. Those who saw Yan Xiaoyi being taken away then realized that it was a kidnapping. After that, the place where Yan Xiaoyi was imprisoned was the secret chamber of the Jubao Pavilion. There was another hidden room inside the hidden room. Furthermore, a soulless spirit formation had already been set up there. The Godless Array formation was the forbidden array formation of the Godless Island. If he wanted to successfully set up the formation, he would need to prepare at least 30 to 50 days in advance. He was someone who could move freely through the Treasure Gathering Pavilion, set up a formation, and knew everything about the Treasure Gathering Pavilion like the back of his hand. Other than the Treasure Gathering Pavilion, who else could it be? On the surface, there was the Shi family and the Chu family. In that case, the young island master of Godless Island must be the force behind Jubao Pavilion. If it was Godless Island. The rumor that the power behind Jubao Pavilion was so powerful that no one could defeat it was also true. Shi Ruoyu put his hands on the table, his face full of surprise and disbelief. How? How did you know? Qing Luo, how did you guess it? The shock and astonishment in the youth's eyes were pure. Yiqing Luo stood up as she smiled lightly, because we've been trapped in the Godless Array for the past few days, so I'm more or less clear about the matters regarding the Godless Island. Godless Array? Shi Ruoyu's body stiffened. Godless Island actually used such a vicious array to deal with you? Godless Island. Ruoyu. Yiqing Luo suddenly turned serious as she called out his name. Shi Ruoyu was still in a trance. You don't have to interfere in this matter. Yiqing Luo looked straight into Shi Ruoyu's eyes. Godless Island is a force outside of Nirvana realm. Anyone who walks out from the island is much more powerful than us. As the future head of the Shi family, you cannot have any conflict with Godless Island. To Shi Ruoyu, she was merely his benefactor who had saved his life in the flame lair. Shi Ruoyu was not willing to risk his life for her and abandon his family. What's more, the Shi family only had 2 descendants, him and Shi Ruoshi. Yiqing Luo liked this pair of siblings from the Shi family from the bottom of her heart. She naturally did not wish for the 2 of them to offend the Godless Island because of her and become the target of the Godless Island. But Shi Ruoyu knew that Yiqing Luo's suggestion to the Shi family was the best choice. But Yiqing Luo was his benefactor. And Shi Ruoshi liked Yiqing Luo so much. If he knew that Godless Island wanted to deal with Yiqing Luo, he still pretended that nothing had happened and continued to collaborate with Godless Island to manage Treasure Pavilion. Wasn't that too inhumane? As if she could see through Shi Ruoyu's thoughts, Yiqing Luo smiled lightly as she shook her head. I'm already very happy that you're worried for me. Don't think too much about it. Even if you interfere now, it won't hurt Godless Island at all. On the contrary, it will affect the Shi family. You just need to control the power of the treasure-gathering pavilion in your hands. After that, we'll think of a way to screw over the Godless Island. A sly and evil smile appeared on her face. A scheming look flashed in his eyes. She laughed lightly. It's not a bad choice to use money to pay for the harm that you've caused me. Shi Ruoyu pursed his lips as he clenched his fists tightly and sat back heavily on the chair. He knew that what Yiqing Luo said made sense. He was interfering now to stand up for Yiqing Luo. The final result might be that Godless Island would be unscathed. Chapter 1919. Shi Ruoyu finally lowered his head and listened to Yiqing Luo's suggestion. All along, he thought that he was considered young and promising. At least he could rely on his own ability to protect the people he wanted to protect. But in the flame nest, he felt his own insignificance and understood the logic that there was always someone better out there. But now, listening to Yiqing Luo's words, Shi Ruoyu increasingly felt that his ability was not as big as what he had imagined. He pursed his lips tightly. A flame in his heart was burning at this moment. After comforting Shi Ruoyu, Yiqing Luo brought Dmo Xian and left the tea room. On the way to Yan Xiaoyi's room, Yiqing Luo glanced sideways at the calm Dmo Xian. Xian, what do you think Godless Island's motive is? Godless Island was a plane outside of Nirvana realm. Its overall ability was above Nirvana realm. But they kept coming to the lower realm, and their target was obviously her. The last time when she just entered Heavenly Academy, she met Wu Sansha who tried to snatch the profound Phoenix Ring. This time, they made use of Yan Xiaoyi to set her up, luring her into the godless array. Could it be? He simply wanted her to be attacked by the formation I in the soulless formation and lose her heart and soul? No. She remembered, the array I once said that it wasn't a coincidence that she returned to the 21st century in the godless array. But someone expended their own power to send her to this plane. Which meant, that person was from Godless Island. Then, what role did Yuming play in this? Or in other words, Godless Island sent her to the 21st century, so that Yuming could use her Yi family's bloodline to enter the ancestor's tomb? Thinking of this, Yiqing Luo couldn't help but feel chills down her spine. This also meant that Godless Island had long known of her identity as a transmigrator. Moreover, she had something that the Godless Island wanted. Or in other words, Godless Island wanted the Yi family's ancestor's item. The more she thought about it, the more terrifying it was. Just as Yiqing Luo was shivering and hugging her own arms, her body had been enveloped in a circle of warmth. The boiling hot chest scorched her delicate body. A warm big palm pressed down on her head. Little Luo, no matter what Godless Island thinks, I will not let Godless Island have any chance to hurt you. A voice that was as mellow as fine wine gently rang in his ears, easily soothing the anxiety and uneasiness in Yiqing Luo's heart. His hands encircled her waist. His kiss landed on the space between her eyebrows. Godless Island caused too much of a commotion this time. They won't do anything for a while. I won't interfere too much with the matters of the lower domain. I will arrange for the Emperor Palace's disciples to investigate the Godless Island. Yes. Yiqing Luo responded as her arms wrapped around his waist, burying her head in his arms. Ah Xian, I will definitely work hard to become stronger. So strong that even Godless Island doesn't dare to have any ideas on me. I know you don't want me to interfere too much with you. You need the opportunity to grow independently. Dmo Xian said warmly, so, I will not stop your growth. You only need to remember, no matter what, I will always be by your side. My protector, my strong backing. Yiqing Luo's eyes curved into a smile as she tiptoed and planted a kiss on his thin lips. I will not let you down. Her current ability was not enough for her to become enemies with Godless Island. Just like what she advised Shiruoyu. Chapter 1920. She would go to the Godless Island one day. Furthermore, by then, she would let Godless Island know that if anyone dared to touch her, Yiqing Luo, or her brothers, there would be consequences. He didn't want to turn that Godless Island into a wasteland. Her name was not Yiqing Luo. Dmo Xian lowered his eyes and looked at the young girl, his eyes filled with battle intent, blazing with fire. He couldn't help but curl his thin lips and smile in his eyes. It was indeed his little Luo heir. He would not be impulsive. If Lil Luo had to find trouble with Godless Island because of this, or if he wanted Godless Island to give him an explanation, even if he didn't agree with it, he would also follow Lil Luo's wishes. Even if he interfered in the matters of the lower realm, he would not hesitate. Luckily, his Lil Luo knew how to recognize her own strength. His forbearance now was not cowardice, but wisdom. This would only strengthen Yiqing Luo's inner heart. When he had enough strength, he gave his opponent a fatal blow. Taking action personally was the real revenge. Night, floating fragrance restaurant. The spacious restaurant seemed to be extremely empty. However, it did not affect the liveliness of the restaurant. Devil classes students, as well as those guards who had put in effort to search for Yiqing Luo and the others for the past 2 days, were seated at 10 over tables. Amidst the bustle, the dean, the vice-dean, and a few other deans who had yet to leave the South Wave continent also came to ask for wine. The news that Shiruoyu had booked the entire First Fragrance restaurant and was inviting the Devil class students to a banquet. It had almost spread throughout the entire Valley Wind City. Those who wanted to build a relationship with the Devil class naturally took this opportunity to rush over to fawn on them. Therefore, the group of people followed behind the dean and vice-dean. Among the few Academy's directors, Yiqing Luo also saw Heavenly Academy's director, as well as the 2 elders Yunxiang and Yunduan. Yiqing Luo's matters, as well as the Blazing Flame Nest's matters, were all related to the Heavenly Academy. The people from the Heavenly Academy were still in the South Continent and could not return to the West Continent. Looking at the Heavenly Dean and Yunxiang, the light in his eyes was extremely complicated, filled with jealousy and disdain. On the other hand, Yunduan looked at the people coming and going in the restaurant with a satisfied smile on his face. Yiqing Luo was able to have such status and prestige today. As the elders of the Heavenly Academy, they should feel proud. Even if the Heavenly Academy had 2 students who colluded with the dark forces. But Yiqing Luo's limelight had completely suppressed this matter. However, the Heavenly Dean and Yunxiang were not happy at all. The dark forces were completely annihilated. This also meant that he would lose the protection of the dark forces. He had spent a lot of energy in the dark world and had to bow down to them. But now, he didn't get any benefits. All these were Yiqing Luo's fault. How could the dean be happy about this? Yun Xiang couldn't stand Yiqing Luo's complacent face. Recalling that he had once caused quite a bit of trouble for Yiqing Luo in the academy. Now that Yiqing Luo had gained power, wouldn't she want to take revenge on him? Moreover, Shiruoyu was hosting a banquet today. Not a single devil class student actually invited them. Where would they put their faces? However, no matter how much resentment he felt in his heart, they had to put on a smile and shamelessly come over. Because, the ultimate goal of this student exchange. But for the sake of the best academy. There was Yiqing Luo in the Heavenly Academy. There was an 80% possibility that this year's best academy would fall into the hands of the Heavenly Academy. For the title of Best Academy. Chapter 1921. However, the entire restaurant was extremely lively. Countless of people surrounded the devil class students, and even the principal and vice principal were squeezed into the crowd. The Heavenly Dean couldn't even squeeze through. Alright, stop staring. Yun Duan caressed his white beard, find a corner and sit first. Yun Xiang retracted his gaze and his old face showed some uneasiness and anger. In any case, you are still a student of the Heavenly Academy. Just a little bit of fame and you even threw us to the back of your mind. The Heavenly Dean restrained the ruthlessness in his eyes, followed behind Yun Duan, and found a table in the corner to sit down. There were at least 200 people in the restaurant. They could not show even the slightest bit of dissatisfaction. Otherwise, if he was caught by someone with ulterior motives, this would cause quite a bit of trouble. After sitting down, Yun Duan raised his teacup and glanced at Yun Xiang leisurely. She relied on her own abilities to lead the students of the devil class and gain everyone's respect. It has nothing to do with us. She is now relying on her fame to leave the Heavenly Academy. That's understandable. Have you also been bewitched by her? Yun Xiang's face darkened. Although he was usually afraid of the First Elder, at this moment, he really could not hold it in. Yun Duan sneered, Yun Xiang, this is why you haven't broken through after 20 years. You're too narrow-minded, you won't be able to achieve anything great. Yun Xiang's face darkened as he tightened his grip on the teacup. Alright. Don't let the other academies laugh at us. The president of Nantao Academy is still here. The president of Shangshuan, who was annoyed by the noise, furrowed his brows and rebuked. He shot a cold glance at Nantao's dean who was seated below Yiqing Luo's table, as he felt more and more infuriated, feeling that Yiqing Luo was intentionally going against Heavenly Academy. They knew that the Heavenly Academy and Nantao Academy were enemies. Every year, they competed for the title of the best academy. Yiqing Luo actually placed Nantao Academy under her seat. Whereas their Heavenly Academy, the Heavenly Academy where the devil class was located, was still sitting in this corner with no one interested. At this moment, a loud noise suddenly came from the surroundings. About 100 people, armed with weapons, barged into the Drifting Fragrance restaurant. The lively atmosphere came to an abrupt halt at this moment. Everyone's eyes were focused on the crowd that had suddenly appeared. Those people were all dressed in black. The weapon in his hand shone with a cold glint. His eyes were vicious, as if he was looking at a dead man. Yiqing Luo pushed aside the few directors who had rushed up to her to propose a toast to her as she squinted her eyes and swept a glance at those 100 over black-robed men as her slender brows rose slightly. She stood up, her posture languid, her long and narrow eyes calm without a hint of panic. Who are you people? Do you know what place this is? Yiqing Luo's chilly voice sounded leisurely in the quiet restaurant. Even if it was a cold interrogation. They all sounded like pearls and jades falling onto a plate, extremely pleasing to the ear. A group of people walked in through the open door. The leader of the group wore a navy blue robe with a belt inlaid with gold. At a glance, one could tell that it was a jade artifact of high quality. Wasn't that Prime Minister's son whom Yi Qing Luo had met once outside the treasure-gathering pavilion? Behind Prime Minister's son were Zhao, Qian, Sun, and Li. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as she squinted her eyes meaningfully. Prime Minister's son was actually still in South Continent? Didn't he bid for the sky-returning primordial serene grass with the price of 70 million gold coins? Chapter 1922. One had to know that even though he was the Prime Minister of the East Wave Continent. However, this was still the territory of the Southern Waves Continent. In his hand was a medicinal herb that was worth 70 million gold coins, enough to raise one's chi. It would definitely attract those desperados who would fight for it with no regard for their lives. Seeing that Prime Minister's son was still in the South Wave Continent, Qin Li's heart skipped a beat. Yi Qing Luo couldn't help but sigh. Was she too good at attracting hatred? In order to stop her, Prime Minister's son risked his life to stay on the South Tide Continent? Should she say that she was very honored? Yo, what kind of wind blew Prime Minister's son over? Yi Qing Luo squinted her long and narrow eyes as she crossed her arms in front of her chest, looking at Prime Minister's son with a smile which didn't look like a smile. That tone made people feel inexplicably like it was a necessary opening line for a brothel keeper. Prime Minister's son's face was steely green as he looked coldly at Yi Qing Luo. His gaze was like a knife, extremely sharp. Yi Qing Luo. You despicable, shameless villain. Yi Qing Luo wasn't angry at all as she gave a light smile. Prime Minister's son inexplicably rushed to Floating Fragrance Restaurant and insulted me as a vile person at the banquet which young master she had arranged for me. Is this the behavior that Prime Minister's son, as an adult, should have? Following Yi Qing Luo's words, everyone's gaze towards Prime Minister's son was instantly filled with disdain. Principal retracted the benevolence on his face as he slowly got up and walked behind Yi Qing Luo as he looked at Prime Minister's son in a dignified manner. Prime Minister's son, this lord respects you as the East Continent's Prime Minister and doesn't wish to affect the relationship between the two continents. If you're in South Waves Continent and act in such an overbearing manner, bullying my students, then don't blame this lord for not taking into consideration the relationship between the two continents. Vice President had already walked behind Yi Qing Luo. Like two guardian gods, guarding Yi Qing Luo on both sides. Prime Minister's son's expression changed slightly. He was so angry that his whole body was trembling. He raised his hand and pointed at Yi Qing Luo as he clenched his teeth and said, "You gave up on the sky-returning primordial serene grass in the Treasure Pavilion's auction, but after I used 7 million gold coins to take away the sky-returning primordial serene grass, you led a bunch of devil-class students to intercept me and snatch away the sky-returning primordial serene grass." The more he spoke, the angrier he sounded. It was obvious that he was furious. As soon as these words came out, the surroundings went into an uproar. There were also quite a number of people who were present at the Jubao Pavilion. The situation that day was very clear. 70 million gold coins worth of heaven-returning origin serene grass was Prime Minister's son's lifeblood. Now that it had been snatched away, it was no wonder that Prime Minister's son would disregard everything and rush over to Floating Fragrance Restaurant to question Yi Qing Luo. However, did Yi Qing Luo look like someone who would lead devil classes students to snatch Prime Minister's son? They were all students. Prime Minister's son's goal in coming to the South Tide Continent this time was to retrieve the heavenly origin serene grass. He had brought at least 500 profound practitioners who were at the Earth Profound Realm and above with him. No matter what, he couldn't convince anyone. Seeing the suspicious gazes of the people around him, Prime Minister's son became even more irritated. I'm the Prime Minister of the East Water Continent. Why would I lie to you about this? The sky-recovering primordial serene grass was indeed forcefully snatched away by Yi Qing Luo leading the devil class. I spent 70 million gold coins to bid for that herb. If Yi Qing Luo doesn't hand over the medicinal herb today, everyone present here, don't blame me for unintentionally hurting you. Bang! Bang! One after another, sounds of slamming the table rang throughout the hall. Each of the Academy's directors had already stood up as they stared coldly at Prime Minister Sunday. In that case, Prime Minister Sun intends to make a move against us? Although I'm just a small director, but since Prime Minister Sun insists on going against this academy, I will absolutely not back off. Chapter 1923. Various academies started to express their protection towards Yiqing Luo. As long as Prime Minister Sun made a move, that was to become enemies with all the academies. These academies, if it was just one academy, Prime Minister Sun wouldn't even bother about them. But 10 over academies added together. That was equivalent to offending the various continents. Most of the forces. What's more, there were 3 academies which were the East Continent's academies. At this moment, they stood on Yiqing Luo's side without any hesitation. The expression on Prime Minister Sun's face turned extremely ugly and gloomy. And Yiqing Luo stood in the middle of everyone's protection, her lips curled into an extremely faint smile. In Prime Minister Sun's eyes, that smile was ridiculing him. His face flushed red, and the taut string in his mind suddenly snapped. Just imagine, exhausting his family fortune to bid for the sky-returning primordial serene grass. It could give him a chance to break through to become a sky mystic overlord, and become the world's revered target. But unfortunately, just as his mind was filled with illusions of himself becoming a sky mystic overlord, the sky-returning primordial serene grass was forcefully snatched by a bunch of young lads. This didn't just destroy his dream of being a supreme being. It also gave him a tight slap on his face. If he let the devil class off, he, Prime Minister Sun's awe-inspiring name, would become a joke in the pugilistic world. He had an illustrious reputation. How could he possibly endure it? He would become a joke. Yiqing Luo. Today, these directors will plead on your behalf. As long as you obediently hand over the sky-returning primordial serene grass, I will not pursue the matter of you targeting me and snatching the sky-returning primordial serene grass. He took a deep breath and suppressed the fury in his heart, making the final compromise. At this moment, there was no benefit for him to go head-to-head with a bunch of Academy's directors. As long as he obtained the sky-returning primordial serene grass and advanced to the sky mystic overlord, he would not let any of these directors who stood on Yiqing Luo's side off. Prime Minister Sun thought. This was his last concession. Smart people would know what to choose at this moment. But, a faint laughter was heard. That fiery red-robed young lady's eyes were filled with smiles. Because of her smile, a pair of long and narrow eyes curved even more devilishly. The people around her couldn't help but sink into her smile. What are you laughing at? Prime Minister Sun shouted in a deep voice. How could she still smile at such a time? Did she really think that she could do whatever she wanted just because she had the protection of the deans of the various academies? I'm laughing at how old Prime Minister Sun is. He's not important anymore. He doesn't even have a brain anymore. Yiqing Luo covered her mouth as she cast a contemptuous sidelong glance at Prime Minister Sun. Your sky-recovering vitality serene grass is missing and you're certain that Devil Class took it away. Then, if I were to say that my god relic is missing, does that mean that you, Prime Minister Sun, snatched it away? As she said that, she sneered, it's just a mouth, you can say whatever you want. You don't want to admit it? Prime Minister Sun roared angrily. Yiqing Luo raised her brows. Why should I admit to something that I haven't done? All right. Good. Good. Prime Minister Sun's face flushed red with anger. This is the person you're protecting. If I can't get the sky-recovering vitality serene grass today, then don't blame me for using brute force. Those directors looked at Prime Minister Sun's infuriated face and their hearts couldn't help but started to beat like drums. How important was the sky-recovering vitality serene grass to Prime Minister Sunday? They had naturally heard of it before. If it wasn't for the sky-recovering vitality serene grass, Prime Minister Sun would have returned to the East Continent long ago to work hard to break through to the Sky Profound Realm. Chapter 1924. Looking at Prime Minister Sun's hysterical look. He was afraid that his returning Heaven Yuan Serene Grass was really lost. Even the various academies' deans joined hands and stood on Yiqing Luo's side. Prime Minister Sun was at a loss. Apparently, he had confirmed that his returning Heaven Yuan Serene Grass was snatched by the devil class. If it was really the devil class who had snatched the returning Heaven Yuan Serene Grass. Even if they really admired Yiqing Luo's ability. However, they would not blindly support this kind of act of helping the evildoer to do evil. The 10 over dean's expressions loosened. Yun Duan, who was sitting in the corner, suddenly stood up and broke the deadlock. Prime Minister Sun, student Yiqing Luo's words have indeed made you unhappy, but there is one thing that she is right about. Dozens of pairs of eyes looked towards Yun Duan. Heavenly Dean and Yun Xiang, who were sitting by the side, immediately restrained their expressions of watching a good show. Following that, they heard Yun Duan continued, everything depends on evidence, it's just one mouth, if there's no evidence to prove that student Yiqing Luo did it, how do you expect us to believe? If you insist that it's our Heavenly Academy's students who snatched your returning Heaven Yuan Serene Grass, then please show us the evidence. Yun Duan's words received the approval of the other academies' deans. Prime Minister Sun stared angrily at Yun Duan, I swear on my position as Prime Minister. If this returning Heaven Yuan Serene Grass is not snatched by devil class students, I will never be able to break through to the Sky Profound Realm. And voluntarily resign from the position of Prime Minister. The entire floating fragrance restaurant was in silence. As everyone knew, Prime Minister Sun had a deep obsession to break through to the Sky Profound Realm. Today Prime Minister Sun actually used the Sky Profound Realm and the position of Prime Minister as a bet. Apparently, he was 100% sure that the returning Heaven Yuan Serene Grass was snatched by devil class. Looking at Prime Minister Sun's infuriated look, Yiqing Luo's heart started to have a suspicion. She narrowed her eyes, as her gaze swept across the devil class students who were seated at the various tables. She actually discovered that a trace of guilt flashed past those students' eyes. Guilty? Yiqing Luo frowned, could it be? She touched the World Mercenary Group's badge, as she spoke in her heart, speak, what's going on? The devil class students looked at each other in dismay. No one dared to bring up this matter. After a short while, it was Long Yunzhan who explained. It turned out that when Yiqing Luo went missing, she had met with the 4 young ladies from the Zhao, Qian, Sun and Li families who were looking for trouble at the treasure-gathering area. Following that, she got into a conflict with Prime Minister Sunday. After that, Yiqing Luo and Prime Minister Sun argued for such a long time in treasure-gathering chambers. With regards to Yiqing Luo's disappearance, devil classes students had heard about Prime Minister Sun and Yiqing Luo's matter and were desperate enough to try any doctor, directly insisting that Prime Minister Sun had kidnapped Yan Xiaoyi in order to take revenge on Yiqing Luo, intentionally luring Yiqing Luo to walk right into the trap. Now that he thought about it, it was incredible. Devil class students blocked Prime Minister Sun's way back to East Continent, forcing Prime Minister Sun to release them. How would Prime Minister Sun know where Yiqing Luo was? Recalling Yiqing Luo's repeated insults towards him, his attitude naturally wasn't very good. Hence, the devil class students evolved into forcefully snatching back the Tianyuan Serene Grass, forcing Prime Minister Sun to release them. Later on, when Yiqing Luo returned, Yan Xiaoyi fainted from being poisoned, and immediately following that, they came to Floating Fragrance Restaurant to gorge themselves. This kind of matter, which was of no importance to them, was thrown to the back of their minds. After listening to these explanations, Yiqing Luo's forehead was filled with black lines. No wonder Prime Minister Sun dared to use the 2 matters which he cared about the most, as bargaining chips for his poison curse. Her bunch of little fellows had really taken action to snatch back the Tianyuan Serene Grass. Their guts were really huge. Star. Chapter 1925. Whatever the devil class did, was also considered as what she, Yiqing Luo, had done. This time round, she really had to let down the various principals' trust. Yiqing Luo silently clicked her tongue as she thought of countermeasures in her heart. The students looked at Yiqing Luo's lowered head and the expression on her face was faintly grave. Some students nervously transmitted their voices through the World Group badge. Why don't I send the sky recovering primordial serene grass back now? Send it back? Why do you want to send it back? Yiqing Luo raised her head abruptly as she stared at that student. This is the sky recovering primordial serene grass which is worth 70 million. The students. You've done beautifully this time. You're a little like me. Yiqing Luo didn't forget to praise herself narcissistically as she rubbed her chin as she gave an evil smile. Things which are already in our hands, how can we return it? The students' lips twitched. There was a reason why they had become so intrepid now. With such a perverted leader. It would be strange if they weren't perverted. But this feeling was so damn satisfying. That's right, that's right. This was the sky recovering primordial serene grass which was worth 70 million. They had spent quite a lot of effort before they managed to snatch it from Prime Minister Sun. If they were to return it, they would be so aggrieved. After hearing Yiqing Luo's words, the students were feeling more and more pleased with themselves. Especially when they saw Prime Minister Sun's face flushed red, they felt even more delighted. Who asked this fellow to show their boss that face in public? Who asked this fellow to take advantage of his seniority and bully others? Who asked this fellow to compete with their boss for the medicinal herb? If they didn't squeeze this fellow dry, then they weren't devil class. After finding out that everything was done by her bunch of brothers, Yiqing Luo's arrogance grew stronger and stronger. So what if it was done by her brothers? Her brother had overturned the skies of the South Billow continent. She could still cover for them. Even if she couldn't, there was still Dmo Xian. She was just that willful. She was just that protective. Whoever had any objections, she would exterminate them. Since Prime Minister Sun made it sound so serious, then I can swear that if I snatched your sky-recovering primordial serene grass, I will become a waste once again. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she crossed her arms and smiled coldly at Prime Minister Sunday. Apparently, she was provoking Prime Minister Sunday. She was indeed provoking Prime Minister Sunday. When the devil class students heard this oath, they could not help but laugh. Boss was really too evil. Boss was just too evil. These 2 days, she went somewhere. It was true that she had never participated in snatching back the Tianyuan serene grass. However, Prime Minister Sun clearly didn't understand this word game. Ye masters ye. He was so angry that the top of his head was smoking and his whole body was trembling. Behind her, Zhao, Qian, Sun and Li family's young ladies couldn't bear it any longer as they scolded loudly, Yiqing Luo. Use Li. Tian. If my uncle wasn't sure that it was you who took back the heavenly primordial serene grass, why would he ask you to take it back in front of so many uncles? Miss Zhao added, I'm sure everyone here knows what the heaven-restoring serene grass means to Prime Minister Sun. If Qing Yang said Luo Yang, Minister Qing Luo Chen. Tian Qing said Qing, Luo Sun, Yiqing Prime Minister Yang Luo did, how, Minister, I, would not, Qing Chen, Yiqing Luo. Prime Minister Sun has given you uncle's face. As long as you hand over the sky-recovering primordial serene grass, we will let bygones be bygones. Don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Qian family's young miss reprimanded her sharply. Chapter 1926. However, Yiqing Luo maintained a light smile from start to end. She narrowed her eyes and looked into their eyes. It was like watching a monkey show. That kind of contempt, insufferably arrogant. Zhao, Qian, Sun, and Li. 4 young ladies' hearts were boiling with anger, and immediately 4 voices were heard as they directly attacked towards Yiqing Luo's direction. He made his move as soon as he said he would. Moreover, they were 4 young girls. Those directors wanted to protect Yiqing Luo. It was not convenient for him to fight with the young girl. Otherwise, if word of this got out, they were afraid that it would turn into them bullying the younger generation. That was exactly what Prime Minister Sun had in mind. The young ladies of the 4 families made their moves. Those self-proclaimed aloof directors didn't dare to make the first move to protect Yiqing Luo. Hey! How dare you all behave atrociously in front of Sister Qing Luo? She didn't care so much. The minute she saw someone attacking her sister Qing Luo, she immediately struck out a burst of profound energy, blocking in front of Yiqing Luo. Bang! The loud sound of someone slamming the table could be heard. The wooden table shattered into pieces. Shi Ruoyu stood up angrily. Despite his young age, his aura was terrifying. Prime Minister Sun, just how dissatisfied are you with my Shi clan and the Gathering Treasures Pavilion? Prime Minister Sun's eyes were full of anger. He was ready to risk everything and wasn't afraid of Shi Ruoyu's threat. I have no intention of becoming enemies with young Master Shi. I just want to take back the sky-recovering serene grass that I bid for with 70 million gold coins. Shi Ruoyu's expression sunk slightly, since Qing Luo said that she didn't take the sky-returning vitality serene grass, then she didn't. This young master believes in Qing Luo's character. Young Master Shi, are you saying that I lied to all of you in front of all of you? Prime Minister Sun glared at him. The old man and the young man refused to give in to each other. The 4 ladies of the Zhao, Qian, Sun, and Li families were stopped by Shi Ruoshi. He immediately changed the direction of his attack and once again attacked towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Shi Ruoshi's bright eyes suddenly flashed with a biting cold light. She raised her hand and pulled out the soft sword hidden in her sleeve, ready to attack. Little Shi. Yiqing Luo suddenly spoke out and stopped Shi Ruoshi's actions. They're just 4 trash that can't even be seen in public. If I let you do it, wouldn't it be dirtying my little Shi's slender and beautiful hands? Shi Ruoshi was stunned, and upon hearing Yiqing Luo's praise, her face immediately turned red. Sister Qing Luo only knows how to tease me. Yiqing Luo smiled slightly as she went forward and pressed Shi Ruoshi's shoulder, pulling her behind her. After that, her charming eyes raised slightly to form a long and narrow arc that was extremely bewitching. You 4 dregs, the lesson at the treasure-gathering pavilion isn't enough for you to remember, right? Then, now, I will make you remember this day. When her words fell, Yiqing Luo's figure had already appeared beside the 4 young ladies of the Zhao, Qian, Sun, and Li families. Everyone only saw a red afterimage flash. Soon after, miserable shrieks rose and fell one after another. In just a moment, the 4 young ladies were like a flower bud, blooming in all directions. Dong, dong, dong. Several heavy objects fell to the ground. The 4 young ladies fell heavily to the ground. Each posture was more twisted than the last. Miss! Miss! At the entrance, 2 middle-aged men suddenly rushed in and towards the 4 young ladies who were sent flying on the ground. They opened their throats and howled. One of the middle-aged men raised his head and stared angrily at Yiqing Luo. You vicious woman! How dare you hurt our miss? Chapter 1927. Yiqing Luo. This act was even more fake than her. Did he need to be so fake? It was obvious that the 2 crying girls were Prime Minister Sun's accomplices. As expected, the next moment, Prime Minister Sun's malicious eyes had already looked towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Yiqing Luo. I have already tried to reason with you nicely, but since you're so stubborn and even hurt the 3 young ladies of the Zhao, Qian, and Li family, if I don't seek justice for them, then I will be ashamed to call them uncle. He finally found a legitimate excuse. Prime Minister Sun raised his long sword as he closed in on Yiqing Luo's direction. That old face was filled with a sinister expression. Apparently, he wanted to take advantage of the situation to take Yiqing Luo's life. He was determined to take back the sky primordial serene grass. Yiqing Luo raised her brows as she squinted her eyes, using her own eyes to analyze Prime Minister Sun's attack in her mind. Her body instinctively started to display her footwork. Just at the moment when Prime Minister Sun approached, he only heard two bam-bam sounds. Immediately following that, Prime Minister Sun's body was flung out like a spinning top. His slightly plump body spun unsteadily on the spot a few times. Following that, his feet became unsteady as he tripped and fell onto the ground. That sound of him falling onto the ground was extremely ear-piercing. Prime Minister Sun laid on the ground in disbelief. What made him flushed red to his ears and extremely ashamed was his face was burning with intense pain. On his old face, there was a clear imprint of 5 fingers. Apparently, the 2 slaps earlier had landed on Prime Minister Sun's face. He was actually slapped twice by Yiqing Luo unknowingly. Moreover, he didn't even notice it. He was slapped onto the ground by Yiqing Luo's powerful strength. How could this be possible? How could this be possible? How could Yiqing Luo possibly make a move on him in such a short period of time without him noticing? Yiqing Luo was merely a 15-year-old young lady. No matter how the outside world had described it to be miraculous, that couldn't change the fact that Yiqing Luo was merely a 15-year-old young lady. Even if Yiqing Luo was a genius among geniuses, at most, she was in the Earth Profound grade. He was an Earth Profound 8th grade Profound practitioner. How could that bitch be stronger than him? It was impossible for him to lose to a 15-year-old girl. Prime Minister Sun's eyes were masked with an eerily cold intent, and immediately after, he faced Yiqing Luo's direction, as he exploded wave after wave of surging profound energy. Waves of qi surged into the sky, stacking layer upon layer as they surged up. It was as if the mountains were collapsing and the earth was splitting apart, as if it was going to devour everything in the world. In the Piao Xiang restaurant, there were not only guests like the dean. There were also quite a number of students who followed their own director and worshipped Yiqing Luo. When this imposing manner engulfed the Piao Xiang restaurant, the entire floating fragrance restaurant resounded with an earth-shattering sound. One could faintly hear the surrounding floors collapsing and teetering on the verge of collapse. There were also some low-level students who were directly forced to spit out a mouthful of blood under this powerful profound rank. You are the prime minister of a nation, yet you are so rude and overbearing. You don't care about the safety of the students of the various academies and forcibly release your profound energy. You are not fit to be the prime minister of the East Water continent. Yiqing Luo gave a cold laugh as she faced Prime Minister Sun's imposing manner, which could swallow the mountains and rivers, totally not showing any signs of fear. Chapter 1928. Yiqing Luo, hand over the returning heaven primordial serene grass. His strong obsession made Prime Minister Sun unwilling to give up, even though he knew that Yiqing Luo's counterattack was extremely dangerous. His sinister eyes were filled with fanatical hatred. His aura, at this instance, surged up another grade. Faintly, it had already reached the momentum of Earth Profound 9th grade. He felt that he was about to break through the barrier. Prime Minister Sun's gaze towards Yiqing Luo was filled with excitement and fanaticism. He excitedly raised the long blade in his hand as he crazily slashed towards Yiqing Luo. The glower flame fan on Yiqing Luo's fingertips shone with a demonic red glow. Just as Prime Minister Sun was coming towards her, Yiqing Luo's fingertips moved. The glower flame fan suddenly opened up. An extremely powerful beam of profound energy poured down from the sky. The beautiful glower flame fan was like a blooming fireball. On Yiqing Luo's fingertips, it was like an excited fire elf, swimming in the flames. It gave off a dazzling brilliance. The fan's shadow flickered as the profound glow exploded. Prime Minister Sun sneered, totally disregarding Yi Qing Luo. He only treated this as an opportunity for him to advance to Earth Profound 9th grade. As long as he advanced successfully, then he would get the returning Heaven Primordial Serene Grass back. He would be a Sky Mystic Overlord Cultivator. He would be able to look down on everything. Look down on everything. Thinking in this way, Prime Minister Sun became more and more arrogant. Facing against Yi Qing Luo's profound glow, he directly collided against it. Bam! A loud sound was heard. An intense profound energy exploded at this instance. Ah! A blood-curdling scream was heard. A figure was seen flying out of the formation. The figure landed heavily on the ground, stirring up a cloud of dust. Prime Minister Sun's face was filled with blood and malevolence. He pressed his chest as he spat out a mouthful of blood. The surrounding deans saw it very clearly. The gazes they shot towards Yi Qing Luo were filled with disbelief. If it was before, they had heard about Yi Qing Luo's various legends. Or even the matter of Yi Qing Luo sealing the King of Darkness's consciousness. The various academies' directors didn't believe it completely. They believed that it was Yi Qing Luo who saved their students. But they didn't believe that it was Yi Qing Luo who had saved their students on her own. But at this moment, he had personally witnessed Yi Qing Luo going head-on against an Earth-profound 8th grade high-leveled cultivator. Prime Minister Sunday Yi Qing Luo was actually unscathed. Furthermore, his expression was one of contentment, as if he hadn't expended any energy at all. On the contrary, Prime Minister Sun was suppressed by Yi Qing Luo's profound energy till he had no way to resist at all. And some of the higher-level profound practitioners of the Earth Profound realm were even more clear about what had happened just now. Prime Minister Sun's dark force suddenly burst out. They could feel it clearly. It was obvious that Prime Minister Sun had already advanced to the 9th grade of the Earth Profound realm under the stimulation just now. This meant that Prime Minister Sun already had the strength of a 9th grade Earth Xian. But even so, he was still suppressed by Yi Qing Luo till he had no way to retaliate. Earlier, Yi Qing Luo had not done any strange actions at all. It was just a simple wave of the glowing flame fan. Then, Prime Minister Sun was sent flying backward. The raging profound energy was still spreading in the air. Prime Minister Sun's flame which was surging suddenly stopped at the instant when he was struck by Yi Qing Luo's profound energy. To the cultivators, they were the clearest on what this indicated. Prime Minister Sun's chance to advance to the 9th grade of the Earth Profound realm had already been destroyed. What's more, Prime Minister Sun's profound jade heart had also suffered a backlash because of this accident. Which meant the current Prime Minister Sun had not only lost the chance to advance to the 9th grade of the Earth Profound realm, and his profound grade had been lowered. Star. Chapter 1929. Of course, this didn't mean that Prime Minister Sun's profound grade was completely countered and could no longer be restored to its original profound grade. But it also didn't mean that Prime Minister Sun's profound grade could be restored. Prime Minister Sun's strength from the backlash had directly become an Earth Profound 6th grade cultivator. Moreover, he was unable to fully unleash his 6th grade profound energy. Otherwise, his profound jade heart would face the situation of his profound chi becoming unstable. In other words, the consequences of Prime Minister Sun being heavily injured by Yi Qing Luo was that the latter half of his life would be ruined. Cough. Cough cough. Large mouthfuls of blood gushed out from Prime Minister Sun's mouth. Those two middle-aged men who were crying about Zhao Qian Sun and Miss Li could no longer pretend as they pounced towards Prime Minister Sun. Prime Minister. Prime Minister. Prime Minister Sun's body trembled as his pair of venomous eyes were filled with helplessness and hatred. He stared fiercely at Yi Qing Luo. If it wasn't for Yi Qing Luo's appearance, How could he have fallen to such a state? Yiqing Luo's brows rose as her eyes were filled with ridicule and ridicule. She sneered as her lips curled upwards as she looked at Prime Minister Sun as though she was looking at a dead object. Hate? He hated her. Yiqing Luo scoffed as she slowly walked towards Prime Minister Sunday. She crossed her arms in front of her chest as her long and narrow eyes rose slightly. Prime Minister Sun, this time. Your dream of being a sky mystic overlord will be completely shattered. You slut. Prime Minister Sun coughed as he spat out the words. Yiqing Luo covered her mouth as she laughed delightfully. So in Prime Minister Sun's mind, a weak woman like me, facing the East Continent's Prime Minister, can only stand there obediently and let you hit me, then that's called not slut? She smiled as she raised her hand and with a paw, she slapped Prime Minister Sun's face. That loud sound made Prime Minister Sun's blood spurt out once again. Yiqing Luo retracted her hand as she smiled at Prime Minister Sun. Prime Minister Sun is indeed not slut. Pfft, the surrounding onlookers couldn't help but laugh out loud. One of them laughed, and the people around him laughed as well. No one knew if they were laughing at Yiqing Luo's humor. Or was he laughing at Yiqing Luo's wit? Or was he laughing at Prime Minister Sun? Prime Minister Sun's face turned green and red as anger surged in his chest. He was about to advance to the earth profound 9th grade, but Yiqing Luo had turned him into a 6th grade trash. And now, he was humiliating him in front of the deans of the continents. Prime Minister Sun's eyes were filled with venom. He couldn't wait to use his eyes to dismember Yiqing Luo into thousands of pieces. Stare at me? Yiqing Luo raised her brows as she approached him smilingly. Before he leaned over, Prime Minister Sun had already shrunk back in terror. His eyes widened as he gritted his teeth and stared at Yiqing Luo fiercely. What are you trying to do? This minister is the Prime Minister of the East Water Continent. If you dare to touch this minister again, the East Water Continent will never let you off. Guards! Why are you guys still standing there? Hurry up and capture this slut who tried to assassinate me. Prime Minister Sun roared as he looked at the group of black-clothed men surrounding the fragrance restaurant. Those 100 over black-clothed men were about to take action after they received the order. Shiruo Yu and the rest of Devil Class's youngsters had already dashed in front of those black-clothed men. This young master wants to see who dares to make a move. Prime Minister Sun was so infuriated that he clenched his teeth. Do you really want to go against my East Water Continent? What's the Prime Minister of East Water Continent? Yiqing Luo's chilly sneer was heard leisurely. Prime Minister Sun must have forgotten. I am the West Water Continent's Three Springs sect. Young Master. Sect. Lord. Star. Chapter 1930. As everyone knew, on the 4 continents, the most respected people were not the imperial family, but the 4 great sects of the 4 continents. It was rumored that they were the guardians of the Nirvana realm, guarding the tomb of the divine emperor of the god race. Even now, the Three Springs sect was not what it used to be because of the current sect master. But at the very least, he still carried the title of one of the 4 great sections. If it was a matter of status. No matter what, it was Yiqing Luo who was the West Continent's Three Springs sect's young matriarch who was more respectable. Even though the former Yiqing Luo had the title of young matriarch, but had no real power. But the current Yiqing Luo was obviously the future patriarch of Three Springs sect. Prime Minister Sun actually dared to use his prime minister position to oppress Yiqing Luo? This was simply a slap in the face. Everyone looked at Prime Minister Sun with ridicule in their eyes. He seemed to be mocking Prime Minister Sun for overestimating himself. Prime Minister Sun was forced to the ground. His cheeks had already turned red and swollen from Yiqing Luo's palms. His old face looked extremely dejected. His eyes were wide open, making his face look even more hideous and terrifying. Yiqing Luo's brows rose frivolously as she met Prime Minister Sun's gaze without any fear as she gave a meaningful smile. Now, what else can Prime Minister Sun rely on to negotiate terms with me? Although Yi Qing Luo wasn't considered as a righteous person. However, he was definitely not a kind-hearted person. If it wasn't for Prime Minister Sun using his title as the Prime Minister to give Miss Zhao, Miss Qian, Miss Sun and Miss Li the right to flaunt their prowess and provoke her, she wouldn't have anything to do with Prime Minister Sunday. Or rather, after the devil class students had snatched the returning Sky Yuan serene grass. The method he adopted was to use the soft approach first and then the hard approach. Perhaps she would be amenable to coaxing but not coercion. However, Prime Minister Sun had to use this method to solve the problem. He couldn't blame her for using the same violent method to strike back at his decision. Sun Qing seemed to have thought of something when he heard one of Yi Qing Luo's words, as his eyes suddenly filled with ridicule and ridicule. He stared at Yi Qing Luo, his eyes filled with sympathy, as though he was ridiculing her. That gaze made Yi Qing Luo sick of it. She furrowed her brows in displeasure. Just as he raised his hand, he saw Prime Minister Sun grinning mockingly. Three Springs Sect? Ha ha ha. You still want to rely on the Three Springs Sect? The current Three Springs Sect had already changed. The new sect master has already stripped you of your position as the young sect master, and he smiled coldly. When he saw the astonishment in Yi Qing Luo's eyes, he laughed even more savagely. That's right. Not only have you lost your identity as the Three Springs Sect's young sect leader, but the new sect leader has also ordered the arrest of a traitor like you. Ha ha ha. You didn't expect it, right? Ha ha ha, you didn't expect it, right? As he laughed, he spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. However, he was still laughing maniacally. Prime Minister Sun's words indeed made Yi Qing Luo stunned. Her eyes flickered and a trace of coldness appeared in her charming eyes. Tell me clearly, what happened to the Three Springs Sect? What new sect master? Traitor of the Three Springs Sect? She had only left the Western continent for less than a month. Something big happened in the Western continent? Don't believe what I said? Prime Minister Sun could tell how much importance Yi Qing Luo placed on the Three Springs Sect. Looking at Yi Qing Luo's pale face, he laughed so hard that he couldn't stop coughing, but he still couldn't stop laughing. The news from the Western continent has gradually spread to the various continents. There are so many deans from various academies present, so I'm sure they have their own channels to find out about this news. Chapter 1931. The deans' faces darkened at once. Their expressions all fell into Yi Qing Luo's eyes. Clenching her slender fingers, she narrowed her eyes and looked coldly at the president of Nantao Academy. Is what Prime Minister Sun said true? Prime Minister Sun did not speak in private. The people around them heard it clearly. When Yi Qing Luo asked this question, the principals immediately shifted their gazes away, not daring to look at Qin Nan. Dean Nantao, who had been called out, could only brace himself and reply, in the past 2 days, there have been rumors that you were kidnapped. Our attention has been focused on searching for you. We have yet to verify the news from the West continent. They had indeed learned of the changes that had occurred in the West Wave continent through their own channels. However, he did not think too much about it. He wanted to wait until the matter of the South Wave continent was resolved before investigating the West Wave continent. Unexpectedly, Prime Minister Sun already knew what had happened in the West continent. Clearly, this matter had something to do with the Three Springs Sect. Qing Luo, I'll get someone to find out more about Three Springs Sect. Shi Ruoyu had already started to make arrangements. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes as her gaze was extremely cold. She suddenly bent down and grabbed Prime Minister Sun's collar. What happened to the Three Springs Sect? Who is the new sect leader? Prime Minister Sun was laughing so hard that he was bleeding. His malevolent face stared maliciously at Yi Qing Luo as he laughed coldly, ha ha ha. This minister will not say anything. Little slut, You've lost the position of young sect master that you're so proud of. Now you're just a traitor that everyone wants to beat up, haha. Yiqing Luo clenched her fists. Little bitch, hand over the returning Heaven Yuan serene grass. I will tell you about the Three Springs sect, or else, the Three Springs sect will soon come to capture you, the traitor. As though he saw the forbearance in Yiqing Luo's eyes. Prime Minister Sun's smile grew wider. Prime Minister Sun's complacent expression caused her to feel even more irritated in her heart. In South Tide Continent's territory, Yiqing Luo could not kill Prime Minister Sunday, otherwise, he would be bringing shame to the South Waves continent. But, she could boldly make Prime Minister Sun's life a living hell. Just as Prime Minister Sun was laughing loudly, something cold slid down his throat. Prime Minister Sun immediately slapped his mouth helplessly. Little bitch. What did you give me to eat? Yiqing Luo's lips curled into an eerie sneer as she didn't even bother to take a look at Premier Sun as she lifted her leg and dashed out of the restaurant. Prime Minister Sun was about to get up and grab Yiqing Luo. Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain in his body. It was as if thousands of silver needles had pierced into his bones. Sometimes itching, sometimes stinging. In particular, the bursts of piercing pain were all aimed at the most painful parts of the bones. Each burst of tingling feeling down. It was as if his bones were broken and his limbs were torn apart. Then, they were reconnected and torn again. He was in so much pain that his entire face was contorted. He fell to the ground and screamed. The deans nearby patted their chests and let out relieved sighs. Fortunately, they did not offend that little devil. The torture methods of this little ancestor were truly horrifying. He didn't know what kind of strange things she was carrying on her. Shiruashi and her siblings and those devil-class students had no mood to bother about Prime Minister Sunday. Chapter 1932. No one had noticed that somewhere on the second floor, a red figure had stopped in his tracks, standing by the side of the railing. The young man's face was as cold as ice, without any emotions. A blazing red robe matched him perfectly, without any sense of incongruity. His 5 fingers were clenched tightly, clasping the top of the railing. A pair of cold black eyes gazed at Yiqing Luo's departing figure without blinking. Earlier, it was just a short moment. He couldn't help but rush to the first floor, to teach Prime Minister Sun a lesson. And to tell her all the news about Three Springs sect. But, eventually he stopped in his tracks. He was already very clear in his heart. That young lady wasn't the young lady he was looking for. He shouldn't place his vision on her. But not knowing why, even though he knew that she wasn't her. In his heart, in his mind, it was all about her figure. 5 fingers, tightened again. The railing broke with a creak. Yiqing Luo's speed was extremely fast, as she rushed back to room 1. In the eyes of outsiders, perhaps they thought that Yiqing Luo had a deep obsession with the position of the young matriarch of Three Springs sect. But, what Yiqing Luo was worried about was not the position of the young matriarch. Attending the South Continent's exchange meet. Yi Fengyu didn't participate, but stayed in the Yi family. If there was a change in Three Springs sect, Yi Fengyu would definitely be in danger. No matter who the new matriarch was, he would not let him off. There was also her loyal servant, Ziling, who was thinking of bringing her out of the Three Springs sect. Rather than wasting time here to interrogate Prime Minister Sunday, why not directly return to room 1, to settle the matters of those students? She had to rush back to the West Continent immediately, to see what changes had happened to Three Springs sect. As the situation was urgent, Yiqing Luo didn't stay for too long. She told Xiao Jin about the matter in a concise and comprehensive manner. She asked Xiao Jin to stay in the South Continent, until Yan Xiaoyi recovered, before returning to the West Continent with the Devil-class students and Heavenly Academy. As for her, Dmo Xian, Long Yunzhan and the rest, they rode on Shiju and Little Nine. By the time the vice principal and a bunch of students reached room 1, Yiqing Luo and the rest had already left. At this moment, Yiqing Luo's thoughts had already flown to the West Continent. Dmo Xian hugged her petite body tightly as he comforted her in a low voice. He had already spread the news. Once they arrived at the Western Continent, someone would inform them of the recent happenings in the Western Continent. Yiqing Luo also knew that the only thing she could do now was to calm her own emotions and wait till they reached the West Continent before she could fully devote herself into the battle. However, when he thought of his silly brother and Ziling, whose leg had not fully recovered, he felt a little guilty. She couldn't help but worry. Shiju and Little Nine were extremely fast. But no matter how fast they were, it would take at least 2 days to travel from the South Wave Continent to the West Wave Continent. Moreover, Shiju and Little Nine still needed to rest. Therefore, by the time they arrived at the West Continent, it was already 3 days later. Before they even got close to the West Continent, Yiqing Luo already sensed the strange atmosphere in the West Continent. It was extremely strange and abnormal. Yiqing Luo and the rest got down from Shiju and Little Nine's body in advance and changed their appearances, making some changes. Just as he was about to approach Three Springs City to look for the person arranged by Dmo Xian. Suddenly, a tall man stumbled into the group of them. Yiqing Luo's sharp body tried to evade him. That person's large palm had already landed on her shoulder. A low hoarse voice was heard by the side of her ear, "It's me, follow me." Star. Chapter 1933. Yiqing Luo's eyes narrowed as she stopped in her tracks. After that, a group of people walked out of the queue and headed towards the direction of the city gate. On top of the city gate's wall, a gorgeous lady dressed in gorgeous clothes was escorted by the guards as she slowly walked over. The lady stood on top of the city gate as her sinister beautiful eyes swept across the bustling crowd below. She narrowed her eyes as her voice was filled with arrogance. "Haven't found the person yet?" The guard's face was filled with flattery. "Eldest young Miss Yi, don't worry. As long as the Yi family's traitor enters the city, we will do our best to capture the traitor." The lady scoffed lightly as a chilly glint flashed past her eyes. "You bunch of trash, you can't even do such a small thing. How are you going to capture the Yi family's traitor? I really don't know what's the use of Three Springs City keeping you bunch of trash." The faces of the guards behind her sunk instantly. But no matter how unhappy they were, they still had to maintain a smile on their faces as they carefully responded to the lady. Suddenly, the lady's expression changed abruptly. Her eyes were fixed on a spot in the crowd in front of her. Following that, the lady leaped up and flipped down from the wall. "Eldest young Miss Yi! Eldest young Miss Yi!" The guards were in a mess. The commoners or merchants who were entering the city were all shocked when a gorgeous lady suddenly leaped down from the sky. However, that lady pushed the crowd aside as her gaze frantically searched through the crowd. Instantly, the outside of the city gate was in a mess. A few hundred meters away from Three Springs City, in a more secluded abandoned temple. Yiqing Luo had yet to open her mouth when she saw the man in front of her walking straight to the back of the Buddha statue. Only to hear a creak sound of stone rubbing against each other. Behind the Buddha statue, a secret entrance appeared. Yiqing Luo raised her brows as she sized up the man with interest. "Zifan, you also made a secret entrance behind the ruined temple. Don't tell me you've long guessed that one day, our Yi family would need to rely on this secret entrance of yours to escape?" She laughed out teasingly as she bent over and entered the secret entrance. The man shook his head as he laughed lightly. "I don't have the ability to predict the future. This secret entrance was made by Zifei, that lad, out of boredom. Although the tunnel was roughly dug, it was enough for a tall man to walk." Yiqing Luo and the rest walked along the secret path for a short while before they saw the lights in front. Following that, a figure walked out. "Big brother, you're finally back. How is it, have you found Qing Luo?" The last word had yet to leave his mouth. When that person saw Yi Qing Luo, his eyes suddenly lit up. Qing Luo. Qing Luo. You're finally back. Looking at the young face in front of her, revealing a joyful expression, Yi Qing Luo couldn't help but laugh. What happened to Three Springs sect? Why are the two brothers of the Mu family hiding in this secret passage? He was right. The one who led Yi Qing Luo and her entourage to the secret passage was Mu family's eldest young master, Mu Zifan. And this person who was currently looking at her with wild joy, was precisely the Mu family's second young master, Mu Zifei. She didn't expect to be recognized by Mu Zifan as soon as she returned to the western continent. Could it be that her disguise had deteriorated? It's sister. Is sister back? Suddenly, a trembling voice sounded from the secret chamber. Following that, the sound of a heavy object falling to the ground was heard. A woman's shocked voice was heard, "Young master, don't move." Young master. Yi Qing Luo's expression changed as she followed the voice and rushed into the chamber. Beside the stone bed at the side of the secret room, a delicate-looking youth fell to the ground in a sorry state. The young man was wrapped in bandages and the bandages were full of mottled blood stains. Star. Chapter 1934. Because of the young man's large movements, the bandage on his body was once again filled with blood. The girl squatting by the side, with a sobbing tone, tried to help the young man back to the bed. But the young man insisted on climbing out of the bed. "Young master, don't move. If you continue to move, you can't use your hands and feet." The girl cried with tears all over her face. "Let me go. I want to see my sister. I want." He hadn't finished his words. An extremely clear voice could be heard saying, "Ziling, let him go." The girl squatting on the ground heard the words, suddenly raised her head and looked in front of her in surprise. A young girl in red stood in front of them coldly, like a waterfall of fine black hair, simply tied up at the temples of a young girl. That face, ordinary and unremarkable. But that pair of charming eyes, just one look, they recognized the identity of the girl. Ziling's throat was dry. After a long time, she spat out two words, "Miss." Yi Qing Luo's expression was indifferent, her eyes were also emotionless as she stared coldly at the two people in front of her. "Ziling, come here." Ziling instinctively wanted to get up. But the muffled groan of the young man beside her made her heart hurt. If she really let go of his hand, he would certainly not be able to stabilize his body, he would fall. Ziling's lips trembled, just as she was about to open her mouth to plead for him. But she was interrupted by Yi Qing Luo's cold voice, "Ziling, you are my servant." Her voice deepened a few notches. Ziling knew that this was the last sign of Yi Qing Luo's tolerance. If she insisted on supporting Yi Fengyu, not to mention whether she would be driven out by Yi Qing Luo, she was afraid that Yi Fengyu would also be implicated because of this. What's more, Yi Qing Luo would not bear to let him get hurt. Ziling pursed her lips and carefully let go of Yi Fengyu's hand. Immediately, she slowly walked to Yi Qing Luo's side. The young girl had already shed the immaturity she once had. She had a pretty face that was extremely delicate and pretty. Her leg had been healed, walking steadily, no one could tell that she was once a disabled person. Yi Qing Luo just took a glance and saw that the current Ziling was actually a cultivator in the yellow profound 7th grade realm. Although this profound grade was extremely low for Yi Qing Luo. However, with Ziling's aptitude, in just a few months, from an ordinary person with no cultivation foundation, she became a profound practitioner. It could be seen that he was no longer trash. She just lacked an opportunity. Yi Qing Luo withdrew her gaze from Ziling. Then, it landed on Yi Fengyu. She narrowed her eyes and crossed her arms over her chest. She looked at the young man who was kneeling on the ground and panting heavily. She curled her lips into a mocking sneer. "Didn't you say that you don't want your hands and feet anymore?" That you don't even want your life anymore? Then stand up and walk in front of me. Miss. Ziling bit her lower lip, tears welling up in her eyes. The Mu brothers who followed behind her coughed lightly. Qing Luo, it's not easy for you two to meet, don't make the atmosphere so stiff. Yi Qing Luo sneered, her eyes were sneering. Yes, because I was worried about him, worried about what happened to Three Springs sect. I rushed back from the southern continent, did not dare to stop for even a moment. It was not easy to rush back, only to find out that my brother is not afraid of death. Sister. Yi Fengyu was in so much pain that he sucked in a breath of cold air. His fair face was drenched in sweat. His voice trembled as he called out to Yi Qing Luo. Don't call me sister, I don't have a brother like you who doesn't take his own body seriously. Yi Qing Luo scolded in a low voice. Star. Chapter 1935. Qing Luo, Xiaoyu also knows his mistake, don't blame him, if he continues to lie down like this, not to mention his feet and hands won't recover, I reckon he will die from excessive blood loss. Mu Zifei tried to smooth things over, quickly walked towards Yi Fengyu, bent down and prepared to help him up. No need to help him. Yi Qing Luo coldly glanced at Mu Zifei. Mu Zifei's body stiffened, pausing his actions. Mu Zifan clutched his chest, obediently shut his mouth and didn't dare to speak. Obviously changed into an ordinary face, thrown into the crowd, absolutely no one would be able to pick out that kind of face. But unfortunately, his aura was still so strong. Especially when he met her enchanting eyes that seemed to have been frozen for 1,000 years. They were so stunned that they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. There was a strange silence in the secret chamber. The Mu brothers looked at each other, seemingly urging each other to break the deadlock. However, after being swept by Yi Qing Luo's gaze, both of them didn't dare to speak lightly. Ziling was even more afraid to speak. And Yi Qing Luo and the rest knew Yi Qing Luo's character very well. Even if they opened their mouths to plead for Yi Fengyu. As long as Yi Qing Luo was still angry, Yi Fengyu still couldn't understand where he went wrong. Yi Qing Luo wouldn't be the slightest bit lenient. Just when everyone's heart was in a state of turmoil, she saw a purple figure slowly walking to Yi Qing Luo's back, raised his palm and gently placed it on her head. The man also had an ordinary face. But no one would be able to think of him as ordinary and mediocre. The man's temperament was out of this world, like a banished immortal. Looking at Yi Qing Luo's eyes, it was full of pampering and gentleness. His big palm gently stroked Yi Qing Luo's head, smiling warmly. Xiaoyu already knows his mistake, don't punish him like this, isn't punishing him also punishing yourself? The Mu brothers' vision fell onto Dmo Xian in unison. Their guess was right. This man was the disguised Dmo Xian. Being touched so gently by the man. Yi Qing Luo's gloomy cold air gradually dissipated by more than half. She unhappily swatted away the hand on her head and stared resentfully at Dmo Xian. She was teaching Yi Fengyu that no matter what, he must always value his own life. However, she could see that Yi Fengyu's body had indeed reached its limit. His heart was aching. However, he could only endure the pain. He had already suffered such a serious injury. His hands and feet were about to be crippled. However, after hearing her voice, he didn't even care about his own body. He just wanted to rush out of the bed and see her. Did he think that being so agitated and doing this meant that he cared about her and that he was constantly worried about her? No. This kind of behavior, Yi Qing Luo only wanted to comment on one word. That was, stupidity. Big sister, I know I was wrong. Yi Fengyu's voice was strained, and all that was left was the sound of his breathing. He fiercely sucked in a breath of cold air and spoke again, Sister, please, help me back to the bed. Yi Qing Luo's tensed expression, under Yi Fengyu's weak pleading, smoothly collapsed. She quickly walked forward and bent down to help Yi Fengyu up. She couldn't help but scold him, "You've learned your lesson, haven't you?" Yi Fengyu was sent to the back of the stone bed. Everyone behind him heaved a sigh of relief. Mu Zifei immediately went forward and took out a new bandage and medicine. "Your injury is very serious. If you don't want to become a cripple, then obediently lie on the bed and don't move around." Yi Fengyu obediently nodded. Chapter 1936. Tell me, what happened to Three Springs sect? What's the situation in Three Springs City now? Yi Qing Luo looked at Mu Zifan. Mu Zifan's complexion immediately became grave. They casually found a place to sit down. Following that, he told Yi Qing Luo everything that had happened during this period of time. Just 6 days ago. Which was also the day when Yi Qing Luo went missing in South Tide Continent. The Three Springs sect was in turmoil. Yi Tianquang, the sect master of the Three Springs sect, was found to be seriously ill in bed, and no one could cure him. Even though the Three Springs sect status in the West Wave continent had declined, it was still one of the 4 great sects that guarded the god race. Such a big sect. He couldn't be without a master for even a day. As the young sect matriarch, Yi Qing Luo was still in South Tide Continent. Just at this moment, Yi Qing Qian brought a large group of powerful cultivators back to Three Springs sect. On the same day, Three Springs sect announced the abolition of Yi Qing Luo's young matriarch position. The reason was that sect master Yi Tianquang wasn't seriously ill at all. Rather, Yi Qing Luo had poisoned Yi Tianquang in order to force him to abdicate. In order to hunt down Yi Qing Luo, the deranged, patricide traitor of the Three Springs sect, Yi Qing Qian recommended the only male in Three Springs sect who was still in the residence, Yi Fengru, as the new patriarch of Three Springs sect. After Yi Fengru became the patriarch of Three Springs sect, he passed most of the authority of Three Springs sect to Yi Qing Qian. Yi Qing Qian then placed the batch of powerful cultivators she had brought along into every corner of the West continent in batches. In a short span of 2 days, the Three Springs sect controlled the lifeline of the entire West continent. Even the 4 great clans had been brutally murdered. If anyone dares to defy the Three Springs sect, on that day, the heads of the entire family would be hung on the city wall. In this way, the forces of the Western continent who were unwilling to accept the outcome wouldn't dare to act rashly. After Yi Qing Luo finished listening, the expression on her face gradually congealed. She knitted her brows and asked, "Yi Fengru and Yi Qing Qian have joined forces? Have you fought with the batch of cultivators that Yi Qing Qian brought back?" She knew that Yi Fengru was ambitious. But she had not expected Yi Fengru to choose to cooperate with Yi Qing Qian. This was truly unfathomable. Moreover, Yi Qing Qian, she was now a member of the Dark Coalition. The group of powerful profound practitioners that he had brought with him was probably the group of people who had escaped from the dark forces. Yi Fengru should be very clear about Yi Qing Qian's current power and the true identity of those cultivators. Now that the dark forces had been completely annihilated by the Imperial Palace, the remaining few wouldn't be able to cause much trouble. Yi Qingjun really couldn't understand. How could someone as smart as Yi Fengru make such a choice? Moreover, he was willing to let go of the authority of Three Springs sect to Yi Qing Qian. What was even more terrifying was, in just 2 short days, the entire Western continent was under their control. Yi Qing Qian wanted to make use of Three Springs sect to let the dark forces return to Nirvana realm. The day it happened, Big Brother and I were chased out by Dad. Mu Zifei shook his head. Father knows that those people from the Three Springs sect won't let you off, so he specially had us 2 brothers stop you before you enter the city. After Mu Zifan bandaged Yi Fengyu's wound again, he sighed lightly. Yi Qing Qian knows that you're definitely worried about Fengyu and has been searching for your whereabouts in the city for the past few days. Once you enter the city. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips, recalling when she was pulled away by Mu Zifan earlier. Falling onto herself, that icy cold gaze. Yiqing Qian probably already knew that she had returned to the western continent. Star. Chapter 1937. What happened to little Yu's injury? Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes and looked at Yi Fengyu. Yi Fengru? Yiqing Qian? On the stone bed, the young man who was wrapped in bandages trembled slightly. Ziling wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and said in a tearful voice, "It's little big." She stopped and a trace of anger appeared in her eyes. "It's that bitch Yiqing Qian." Ziling. Yi Fengyu shouted in a hoarse voice, as if he wanted to stop Ziling. Ziling's lips moved. After receiving the look from Yiqing Luo, she continued, "Yiqing Qian, that bitch. In order to force young master to submit, she forced him to write a letter to trick you back to Three Springs sect, so that she could catch you like a turtle in a jar. Young master naturally refused to listen, so that bitch directly crippled young master's right hand and right leg. And almost crippled young master's cultivation." Ziling's tone was full of hatred and anger. She clenched her fists and looked at the wounded Yi Fengyu on the stone bed, gritting her teeth even harder. Yiqing Luo's expression became more and more solemn. That pair of enchanting eyes seemed to be stained with a layer of coldness. When she helped Yi Fengyu earlier, Yiqing Luo had already taken the opportunity to feel his pulse. Yi Fengyu not only suffered from serious external injuries, but his internal injuries were also extremely serious. Without careful recuperation, she was afraid that Yi Fengyu would really be a cripple in this life. Moreover, the meridians of his hand and right leg were broken. Just how ruthless was he? Yiqing Luo could almost imagine how much torment and pain he had suffered at that time. Yiqing Qian. She did not look for her. How dare she take the initiative to stir up trouble? How did you escape? Yiqing Luo's gloomy voice was extremely strange. Her gaze swept over the Mu brothers. The two of them shook their heads and waved their hands. "No, it wasn't us. We were about to sneak into the Three Springs sect through the back door to gather information for you when we were attacked by these two people." Yiqing Luo frowned. Someone rescued Yi Fengyu and Ziling. And threw it to the Mu brothers who were about to sneak in? Ling didn't see that person's face clearly, but Ling knows that the person who saved Ling and young master is a man, and he's very strong. Even that bitch didn't have the chance to fight back in front of him. Ziling recalled the situation at that time and clenched her fists angrily. Ling thought that it was someone arranged by Miss to protect young master. If it wasn't for that person who saved young master would definitely be tortured to death by that bitch. Yiqing Luo's tightly clenched fist loosened slightly, then clenched it again. The process repeated more than 10 times. Only then did she suppress the anger in her heart. She slowly walked to the stone bed and looked at the young man who was covered in wounds. Even though he was bandaged, he was still bleeding. She raised her hand and gently stroked his messy hair. "Little you, now that I'm back, leave the rest to me." "Sister." Yi Fengyu looked up anxiously. Yiqing Luo's gaze made him swallow back the words he was about to say. Yiqing Luo withdrew her hand and looked at him firmly. "Little you, now you are the only one who can shoulder the responsibility of the Yi family, do you understand? Nothing must happen to you, otherwise Three Springs sect will really cease to exist." Yi Fengyu's face turned green, he blinked his eyes were filled with panic and helplessness. "But sister, you are the..." Chapter 1938. Yi Fengyu's eyes became more and more flustered as he subconsciously moved back. It seemed like he didn't want Yiqing Luo to touch his forehead. However, as soon as he moved, a burst of tearing pain came from his body. He hissed and sucked in a breath of cold air. The girl's cold fingertips had already fallen on his forehead. Yiqing Luo's lips curved, revealing a smile. Her smile was filled with endless warmth. Yifengyu only felt a warm feeling, like spring water, spreading from his forehead and passing through his brain. Then, his forehead was boiling hot. A few moments later, several patterns appeared on Yifengyu's forehead. The pattern was extremely light, very shallow. But it could be faintly seen that it was a cherry blossom pattern outlined by red flowing light. Yifengyu's eyes widened, staring at Yiqing Luo in astonishment. Sister, why, how did Yiqing Luo know that there was a cherry blossom pattern on his forehead? When this cherry blossom pattern appeared on Yifengyu's forehead, the people around them were all dumbfounded. They looked at the pattern on his forehead incredulously. Although it was only a few shallow lines. But it was enough to clearly distinguish that it was a cherry blossom. Mu Zifan was the first to react. He quickly rushed to the stone bed, both hands on the stone bed, staring at the pattern on his forehead. This is the mark of the 4 major sects? Yiqing Luo straightened up, her lips hooked up into a smile. Rumor has it that the 4 major sects are the guardians of the Divine Emperor's tomb, as well as the envoys to maintain peace and balance in the Nirvana realm. Every patriarch of the 4 major sects is personally selected by the Divine Emperor. In every generation, only one person can obtain the inheritance of the patriarch, which is, this Divine Emperor mark. Yiqing Luo's slender fingers pointed to his forehead. Fengyu. Fengyu is the real young patriarch of 3 Springs sect. The Mu brothers were stunned. They had always thought that Yiqing Luo was the real person who obtained the Divine Emperor mark. Otherwise, in the past 15 years, Yiqing Luo was a waste without any cultivation ability. How could Yi Tianquang let her be the young patriarch of 3 Springs sect for so many years? But, the God Emperor mark appeared on Yifengyu's body. That also meant that the real young sect master was actually Yifengyu. Every generation of the 4 major sects only had one sect master to inherit the legacy. It's not like this, no. Sister, Yifengyu couldn't understand why Yiqing Luo would reveal the God Emperor's mark on his forehead. Moreover, Yiqing Luo's forehead also had this mark. It was when he fought with the Corpse King in the tomb of the Ling King. He saw that cherry blossom pattern on Yiqing Luo's forehead. Moreover, that pattern, that mark. Compared to the mark on his forehead, it was thousands of times more obvious. Yiqing Luo was the one who truly possessed the God Emperor's imprint. Big Sister knows that you've always kept this secret and gave the position of young sect master to Big Sister in order to protect her. Yiqing Luo had already interrupted Yifengyu's words with a smile. Yifengyu stared at Yiqing Luo in a daze. A strange emotion was gradually surging in his heart. Yiqing Luo didn't give him a chance to think deeply. Under the bright candlelight, Yiqing Luo's smile was clean and pure. But in the next moment, her hand was already lightly placed on his shoulder. Her strength was very light and didn't touch his wound. However, Yifengyu could feel a heavy pressure on his shoulders. He wanted to speak. Chapter 1939. So Xiaoyu, what you need to do now is to cooperate with Zifan's treatment. Yiqing Luo's expression was solemn. In a few days, Master Ghost Doctor will be back. By then, I will plead for Master Ghost Doctor to treat you. Mu Zifan's eyes lit up. You mean Ghost Hand Doctor? Yes. Yiqing Luo nodded. With Master Ghost Doctor around, Xiaoyu has an 80% chance of recovering. But the prerequisite is Xiaoyu, you must cooperate. Yifengyu was still in a state of shock. Yiqing Luo's hand had already moved away from his shoulder. If you want to protect me, if you want to give me a family that I can rely on, then promise me that after you cooperate with my treatment, you'll help me take back 3 Springs sect. You'll make 3 Springs sect flourish and become my strongest backer. Following Yiqing Luo's firm and encouraging voice, Yifengyu's gaze gradually became firm. He looked at Yiqing Luo. In his heart, a flame was burning. Although the flame was small, but it had the power to start a prairie fire. I promise you. I want to become my most solid fortress. I will protect my sister, and not let anyone bully her. The young man's sonorous voice revealed his conviction. Yiqing Luo smiled as she patted his head, her eyes filled with warmth. Amen, I believe you. After comforting Yi Fengyu, watching the young man relax his willpower, and slowly fell into a deep sleep, Yiqing Luo then left the stone bed. She had just taken a few steps when her body was enveloped by a wave of warmth. The man's strong arm carried her up by the waist. You need to rest too. Dmo Xian's low and hoarse voice was filled with anger. Ever since she found out that Three Springs sect was in trouble, Yiqing Luo had been worried about Yi Fengyu and Ziling, and hadn't been able to close her eyes for the past few days. Even if she occasionally took a nap in his arms, she would wake up in less than an hour. Now that she was sure that Yi Fengyu was still alive, she should take a break. I want to make a trip to Three Springs sect. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips, clenching her fists. No way. This time, Dmo Xian didn't listen to Yiqing Luo's words, forcefully rejecting her request. I have already allowed you to be willful for 3 days. Three Springs sect's matters can be settled any time. Now, rest. It was an irresistible voice, and one could hear the anger in it. Obviously, this was Dmo Xian's bottom line. Yiqing Luo opened her mouth, knowing full well that Dmo Xian was worried about her health and was unable to refute his concern. Tong Ziqing tried to smooth things over. That's right, Qing Luo, what the overlord said is right. We've been on the road for 3 consecutive days, and even if you're not tired, we're all tired. Let's take a rest here first. You have a mortal body. Even if your body is made of iron, it won't be able to withstand your torment. Long Yunzhan said lightly. Mo Yuing was like a puppet. She nodded stiffly and said in a stiff voice, even I feel tired. If you don't want me to use other methods to make you sleep, then obediently close your eyes. The deep and pleasant voice seemed to be hypnotizing as it floated in her ears. Yiqing Luo stared resentfully at Dmo Xian's magnificent face. In the end, she still succumbed to his despotic power. All right, she was indeed very tired. Moreover, Long Yunzhan and the others were also tired. Whether she wanted to or not. The final result would probably be, she rested in Dmo Xian's arms. Forget it, forget it. Rather than letting Dmo Xian use extreme methods to force her to sleep, she might as well take the initiative to rest. Perhaps it was because the arm which was hugging her was too safe. Or perhaps it was because his elegant sandalwood scent was too reassuring. But after closing her eyes for a moment, she fell into a deep sleep. Star. Chapter 1940. Yiqing Luo's sleep had lasted for an entire day. Perhaps it was because the tension in her emotions these few days had been relaxed in this instance. Or perhaps it was because of Dmo Xian's warm and reassuring aura which lingered around her nose. After Yiqing Luo woke up, she felt that her entire body was extremely relaxed. There was no trace of the laziness and softness from sleeping for an entire day and night. She was suspicious. Did she undergo a profound energy baptism while she was sleeping? The moment she moved, the man who was hugging her also woke up in shock. He slowly opened his shimmering peach blossom eyes as his dense long lashes moved lazily and seductively. His eyes, which had just woken up, were filled with a hazy mist. Even though she was used to seeing Dmo Xian's peerless elegance. At this moment, Yiqing Luo's heart was like thunder. She gazed at Dmo Xian's face in a daze, as though she was in a daze. Sensing the young lady's gaze, Dmo Xian's lips curled slightly as he laughed lightly. Are you satisfied with this husband's face? Yiqing Luo's cheeks instantly flushed red. She speedily shifted her gaze away. Husband, these 2 words fell into Yiqing Luo's ears, as though it was teasing her about something. Dmo Xian gave a low laugh. His chest vibrated, rising and falling. His brows were filled with a teasing smile. Yiqing Luo's face turned even redder from his laughter. Pfft! An unbearable laughter was heard from the side. Yiqing Luo immediately stared angrily. She saw Tong Ziqing covering her mouth, but her curved eyes were unable to conceal the smile. Seeing Yiqing Luo looking at her, Tong Ziqing was helpless as she put down her hand which was covering her mouth, but her eyes were still filled with laughter. Sorry Qing Luo, I wanted to hold it in. But seeing you behaving like a little wife in front of the overlord, I just couldn't hold it in, ha ha ha. Tong Ziqing couldn't help but laughed out loud. Laughing till the end, she knew that even if she stopped, Yiqing Luo would absolutely not let her off easily. She might as well hold her stomach and laugh out loud. The corners of Long Yunzhan and the others' mouths also curled up into an extremely shallow arc. Yiqing Luo smashed her head hard into Dmo Xian's arms. Damn! She had forgotten that Long Yunzhan and the rest were still watching from the side. Could it be that the scene of her staring at Dmo Xian's face in a daze had been seen by them? Her image. Her image. Jokes aside, after the atmosphere became lively. The Imperial Palace's disciple whom Dmo Xian had arranged in advance brought the news. Just as they rested in the secret passage for a day and a night, another earth-shattering change occurred in Three Springs City. It wasn't until this afternoon that the matter had completely fermented. The situation had already developed into a serious trend. Speaking of this, it had to start from yesterday, when Yiqing Luo and the others were outside the city gates. It was indeed like what Yiqing Luo had guessed. Yiqing Qian already knew about Yiqing Luo's return to the West Continent. Because outside the city gate, he had only caught a glimpse of red dress. Yiqing Qian was almost certain that Hong Yi was Yiqing Luo. Hence, Yiqing Qian summoned those guards from Three Springs sect to search for Yiqing Luo's whereabouts in the entire city. This search lasted for an entire day. By the afternoon of the second day, Yiqing Qian lost her patience. Yiqing Qian knew that if Yiqing Luo intentionally hid, even if she dug 3 feet into the ground, she might not be able to find any traces of Yiqing Luo. Hence, Yiqing Qian used an extreme method to force Yiqing Luo to appear on her own accord. The current Yiqing Qian in Three Springs City, or even in the West Continent, could be said to be able to cover the sky with one hand. Even if it was the royal family, they were unable to do anything to her. Star. Chapter 1941. Not to mention, the 4 great families. Especially the Mu family. Yiqing Qian led the guards from Three Springs sect and those powerful cultivators, who were the remnants of the dark forces, to surround the Mu family and kidnapped the entire Mu family, forcefully bringing them to the West Lawn Square. And she had already spread the news to the entire West Lawn Island. If they didn't see Yiqing Luo and the rest appearing tonight, Yiqing Qian would directly dismember the entire Mu family at the West Lawn Square. Not only would the Mu family be unable to keep their corpses intact, she would also slice the Mu family into minced meat in front of the commoners. After these words were spread, the commoners were horrified. Some of them kept berating Yiqing Luo. They were certain that if it wasn't for the enmity between Yiqing Qian and Yiqing Luo, why would Yiqing Qian take revenge on the West Lawn continent? How could the entire West Lawn continent be controlled by a bunch of third-rate 9 sects? Especially now that they saw the Mu family who had always been helping the people, because of Yiqing Luo, being held up at the West Lawn Square, about to be humiliated by that vicious woman. The commoners' dissatisfaction towards Yiqing Luo, towards Three Springs sect, started to grow and spread in their hearts. They who were in deep trouble. They had all forgotten that before this happened, they were still saying that they were proud of Yiqing Luo. Of course, this wasn't the end. The situation was still fermenting. Just 6 hours after Yi Qingqian kidnapped the entire Mu family. She gathered those remnants of the dark forces, guarding the surroundings of Three Springs City. Once the Mu family was dismembered, they started to kill the commoners from house to house. In a quarter of an hour, one family was massacred. Until the traitor of Three Springs sect, Yi Qing Luo appeared. The moment this news came out, not only were the guards from Three Springs sect searching for Yi Qing Luo's whereabouts, even those commoners joined in the search. None of them wanted to die. None of them wanted to die for an insignificant person. As long as they found Yi Qing Luo and handed her over, none of them would have to die. As a result, the entire Western continent was plunged into chaos. The few people in the secret room heard that and their expressions turned gloomy. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes as she sneered sinisterly, "She's gone out all of a sudden, not even wanting her own reputation." In the past, what Yi Qingqian cared about the most was her reputation. She painstakingly put on a gentle and virtuous mask and was called the #1 beauty. But now, she was infamous, so she didn't care. It could be seen that after the repeated exchanges with Yi Qing Luo, the baptism of defeat, it had already made Yi Qingqian's heart extremely firm. Despicable and shameless. How dare she be so cruel? Who did she, Yi Qingqian, think she could control the West Continent? How could the other three mainlands possibly give her this opportunity? Mu Zifei was endlessly furious. He clenched his fists tightly and his eyes were scarlet red. Tong Ziqing's icy cold eyes were filled with murderous intent. That damned Yi Qingqian, if I don't beat her till she begs for mercy, my surname is not Tong. It was too cruel. Too despicable. He completely viewed human lives as worthless. Even using the Mu family's people to force Yi Qing Luo to appear. Qing Luo. Mu Zifan, who had been silent, suddenly opened his mouth. That usually gentle face was solemn at this moment. He clenched his fists tightly as a trace of struggle flashed past his face. "She openly lured you to the West Lawn Square, there must be a trap, you can't." Chapter 1942. Qing Luo. Mu Zifan's complexion darkened. "If you go, you'll be throwing your life away. Zifan, I know you care about me." Yi Qing Luo's expression was very calm, without a trace of panic. It was as if he didn't know what kind of danger he would encounter once he went to the West Billow Square. She raised her charming eyes and a warm smile appeared on her face. "You treat me as your brother and I also treat you as my brother. If I sacrifice the Mu family for my survival, how can I live peacefully?" Although she had never seen anyone from the Mu family, but from the Mu brothers, she could clearly tell what kind of people the two elders of the Mu family were. Moreover, he was able to maintain his monogamous character in this era where concubines were common. It was enough to prove that the character and quality of the Mu family were extremely high. Otherwise, the two elders of the Mu family wouldn't have kicked the Mu brothers out of the Mu family on the day when the Three Springs sect was in trouble and asked them to specially stop her outside the city gate to tell her about the recent events in the West Continent. More importantly, they were relatives of the Mu brothers. How could Yi Qing Luo possibly sit back and do nothing for her own safety? Qing Luo. Mu Zifan's throat was dry. "Alright, let's not talk about anything else. With Ah Xian by my side, even 100 Yi Qingqian can't do anything to me." Yi Qing Luo was just about to raise her hand and pat Mu Zifan's shoulder. But her hand hadn't even touched Mu Zifan. His body was suddenly pulled back by someone. Yi Qing Luo fell into the man's arms. She turned around, put her hands around his waist, and said with a smile, "My protector, my thigh, are you jealous?" Dmo Xian narrowed his long and narrow peach blossom eyes, his thin lips were tinged with a smile, but inexplicably revealed a trace of chilliness. His gaze seemed to be asking, "What do you think?" Yi Qing Luo shuddered and stuffed her head into his arms. "With such a thick thigh here. She decided to hug him tightly. No matter what tricks Yi Qingjian wanted to play, she was fearless. This was what it felt like to ride on someone's coattails, to have a patron, and to have a backer. Not satisfied? If you're not convinced, then find someone more powerful than His Majesty the Overlord to fight. Yi Qingluo would choose to go to the West Lawn Public Square. This was within everyone's expectations. No one spoke up to stop them. There were still 6 hours until the Ion hour. Yi Qingluo took a look at Long Yunzhan and the others as she pondered deeply for a moment. The few of us will go to the West Continent Public Square and save the Mu family's 2 elders, you all. She glanced at the Mu brothers. Presumably, the South Continent already knows about what happened in the West Continent. Zifei, find a way to contact the spies in the South Continent and send a letter to the headmaster of the headquarters. As long as he is willing to help me protect the Three Springs sect, we can still discuss the deal we discussed before. Mu Zifei memorized Yi Qingluo's words and nodded vigorously. Yi Qingluo's gaze shifted. Zifan, I'm afraid we need the Alchemist Guild to take action. The entire West Continent was already under Yi Qingqian's control. In reality, it was in the hands of the remnants of the Dark Forces. The surviving members of the Dark Forces were cruel and bloody. If he were to forcefully use the power of the Imperial Palace to suppress the remnants of the Dark Forces, it would be impossible for him to survive. He was afraid that they would retaliate. Moreover, there was a possibility of inconveniencing Dmo Xian. Yi Qingluo could roughly guess it. Dmo Xian was an existence outside of Nirvana realms. Every plane had its own rules of survival. If other planes or the messengers wandering around the planes discovered Dmo Xian, who knows, they might even bring Dmo Xian back to his plane. She couldn't keep using the power of the Imperial Palace. Star. Chapter 1943. The Mu brothers nodded their heads vigorously as they responded. Following that, the 2 of them received their mission and left the secret room. Yi Qingluo's vision swept onto Long Yunzhan and the others. She squinted her eyes slightly as she spoke calmly. You 2 go into the vicinity of the West Square first and investigate what kind of trap Yi Qingqian has set for me. Saying that, Yi Qingluo slowly walked towards Long Yunzhan. She raised her hand and her slender fingers brushed past Long Yunzhan's eyes. Long Yunzhan was slightly stunned as he looked at the fingers brushing past his eyes, but he didn't resist at all. Even his eyelids didn't blink at all. Immediately after, Long Yunzhan felt his pupils turning icy cold. As though something had entered his eyes. He moved a little but there wasn't any abnormality. Just as he was about to ask Yi Qingluo what she meant by this. But he saw Tong Ziqing staring at him in a daze. Class monitor, your eyes. Eyes. Tong Ziqing's fingers trembled as she stared at Long Yunzhan's eyes, as though she had suffered a shock. Long Yunzhan raised his hand and wanted to touch his eyes but was stopped by Yi Qingluo. Don't move, this is to help you hide your azure blue eyes. This was something which she specially made for Long Yunzhan, similar to the modern era's cosmetic contact lenses. In the 21st century, Yi Qingluo had this idea. She also used practical actions. After all, Long Yunzhan's eyes were indeed too conspicuous in Nirvana realm. No matter where he went, he would probably be recognized. Originally she wanted to give it to Long Yunzhan as a gift. She had not expected it to be put to use now. Long Yunzhan now had a pair of brownish-black pupils which was no different from normal people. After getting used to Long Yunzhan's blue eyes, to see this normal color again. Tong Ziqing couldn't help but be shocked. She was also shocked at what Yi Qingluo had done to be able to change a person's pupil color. The few of them had changed their appearances and were dressed in extremely ordinary clothes. Adding on to the fact that Long Yunzhan's unique eyes were concealed. Yi Qingqian and the Dark Force's remnants would absolutely not be able to discover them. Then sister. What does Kitty want to do? Kitty Li tilted her head as her bright eyes blinked. Yi Qing Luo rubbed her swaying black cat ears. You and Lu stay here to take care of Xiao Yu. Lu is in charge of changing Xiao Yu's dressing while you are responsible for their safety. Leaving Kitty Li here. Actually, she had her own selfish motives. The relationship between Kitty Li and that devil-like instructor Zhou Mo was obviously ambiguous. If this matter were to spread to the South Billow continent, Zhou Mo and Gui Wu should also receive this news. Zhou Mo was worried about Kitty Li, so he would definitely follow Kitty Li's scent. This would ensure Yi Fengyu's safety. The bigger reason was that Kitty Li had already signed a blood contract with her. She now possessed more than half of the Beastman's power. The battle between her and the King of Darkness, affecting two sacred beasts, affecting Shiju, naturally also affecting Kitty Li, who had signed a contract with her. If Kitty Li could use this to advance, it would naturally be the best thing. If he failed to advance, staying here would also ensure Kitty Li's safety. Yi Qing Luo rubbed Kitty Li's head once again as she reminded her softly. Sister, then you. Where are you going? Kitty Li's black cat ears moved. Asking Long Yunzhan and the others to go to the West Billow Square to scout for news, didn't that mean that Yi Qing Luo wasn't intending to go to the West Billow Square now? Chapter 1944. Dmo Xian's thin lips rose slightly. Between his brows, there was a glint as it shone brilliantly. That magnificent aura made one's heart fluttered. Enough, Thai. If you continue to tease me, I won't be able to control myself. Yi Qing Luo stared at him resentfully. This man, why was he releasing male hormones all the time? She was almost smelled by this scent and her amorous heart started to sway. Dmo Xian shook his head helplessly. This lass, previously she called him her guardian angel. Now she even gave him a new nickname, What Thai. He didn't know why her brain was filled with so many strange things. Dmo Xian held her arm tightly, fixing her petite body in his embrace. His loose black hair brushed against her face. I'll make a trip back to the Imperial Palace first. Dmo Xian heard that Yi Qing Luo wanted to go somewhere and had already guessed her plan. Now Yi Qingqian's thoughts were all placed on the West Lake Square. Whereas the place Yi Qing Luo wanted to go. He was very confident in his own woman. That place couldn't trap Yi Qing Luo at all. Ah Xian. Yi Qing Luo frowned as she grabbed Dmo Xian's arm. This matter, we don't need the Imperial Palace. I promise you, unless it's a critical juncture, the Imperial Palace will not make a move. Dmo Xian rubbed her head as he said warmly, I just want to ensure that nothing goes wrong with you. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips. Don't worry, this matter concerns the dark forces. Even if I make a move, it's a matter of course and I won't receive any punishment. Dmo Xian saw the worry in Yi Qing Luo's eyes as he lowered his head and kissed her lips. I'm more unwilling than anyone else to leave you. It was just a light sentence. It soothed the restlessness in Yi Qing Luo's heart. The man's elegant sandalwood scent seeped into her heart bit by bit. The two's warm and sweet atmosphere, even though the surrounding people had seen it many times, they still couldn't resist being stuffed with dog food. After they had allocated their respective tasks, the few of them quietly left the secret tunnel. Before Dmo Xian left, he called Tang Beiyuan out. This was the secret guard who replaced Wind to protect Yi Qing Luo in the dark. A figure, like a ghost, quickly moved on the dazzling golden city wall. The guards came and went but none of them had detected any trace of Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes as she followed the map in her memory and landed stably on the roof of the Crown Prince Palace. Her footsteps were light and did not make any sound. Yiqing Luo released her perception as her vision swept across the surroundings. After confirming that there were only 2 remnants of the dark forces guarding the Crown Prince Palace, one at the front and one at the back. Relieved, she leaped into the Crown Prince's palace. He was right. Before going to West Lawn Square, she wanted to go to the Imperial Palace. The Crown Prince Palace was completely silent. It was so quiet that it didn't feel like the Crown Prince Palace at all. The faces of the maids and manservants that came and went were tense, and they were extremely careful. They were deeply afraid that they would offend any lord and end up with their heads separated from their bodies. Yiqing Luo followed her memory and found the Crown Prince's bedroom. She stretched her body, and her soft body bent into an arc that ordinary people couldn't do. He slid in through the window. There was not a single sound of breathing in such a huge chamber. It was so quiet that it didn't seem like the place where the Crown Prince stayed. Yiqing Luo walked into the inner hall of the bedroom. The entire room was filled with the stench of alcohol. Yiqing Luo walked closer. He saw a tall figure sitting beside a mahogany table. On the table, there were a total of 8 wine jugs lying crookedly. There were also a few wine cups lying crookedly on the table. This showed how dispirited this person was. He was so drunk that he seemed to have lost his senses. He didn't even notice Yiqing Luo's approaching footsteps. Star. Chapter 1945. Crown Prince really can't take the blow. It's just a small setback and you've already turned yourself into such a dispirited look. Those who don't know would have thought that Crown Prince had already been crippled. The young lady's voice was crisp and melodious, as though she was drinking from an icy spring. However, her tone was filled with disdain and arrogance. Who? The drunk man banged on the table as he staggered as he stood up. He squinted his eyes, as though he couldn't see the person in front of him clearly. His entire body reeked of alcohol, causing the entire luxurious bedroom to be filled with the smell of alcohol. TSK. Yiqing Luo crossed her arms in front of her chest as her slender brows rose slightly, her eyes filled with a sneer of ridicule. Looks like I've wasted my time coming here today. Saying that, she turned around. Her flame-like skirt swept out in an arc that resembled a blazing sunset glow. The man stared at that arc. His pupils suddenly contracted as he staggered forward and chased after her for a few steps. With a put-on sound, he fell heavily onto the ground. The man's dragon totem, which was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, seemed to have lost its ferocity at this instance. Yiqing Luo's footsteps took a slight pause. She slowly turned around as she looked at the disheveled man who had fallen onto the ground. Leng Fengying, what else do you want to say? The man in front of her was the former second prince, the current crown prince, Leng Fengying. That handsome and delicate-looking, seemingly harmless face had long been covered with dejection and vicissitudes of life. Leng Fengying struggled, trying to climb up from the ground. But after he was drunk, he couldn't muster up any strength. He felt as though he was stepping on cotton. But his consciousness was telling him very clearly. He absolutely could not let the young lady in front of him leave. This young lady was his god. Leng Fengying was so drunk that he couldn't see who the person was. There was only a strong sense of familiarity and that feeling which made him inexplicably fearful. Controlling him to ask Yiqing Luo to stay. Don't go. Don't go. Leng Fengying mumbled in fear as he raised his hand up high, as he grabbed towards Yiqing Luo's direction. But he couldn't grab anything at all. Save me. Save me, I beg you. The current Leng Fengying, where had the previous gentleness, high spirits, or the royal family's nobility? He was dejected, as if he had found a life-saving straw. He only wanted to hold on tightly and beg her to save him from this deep and fiery quagmire. Yiqing Luo looked at him coldly. There was not the slightest emotion in his eyes. In her memory, in terms of appearance, Leng Fengying might not be able to match up to Leng Fenghua. However, his explosive aura, as well as his own ability and intelligence, all surpassed Leng Fenghua's. But he didn't expect the current Leng Fengying. His endurance was actually so poor. If it wasn't for the sake of the Mu family, she really didn't want to have anything to do with this Leng Fengying. She scoffed lightly as she slowly walked towards Leng Fengying. Her slender fingers pinched a pill. With a flick of his finger, the pill drew a beautiful arc in the air. That pill landed steadily into Leng Fengying's mouth. He looked up at her blankly. When the pill entered his mouth, an extremely bitter and spicy taste filled his mouth. Leng Fengying only felt a splitting headache. He held his head and beat it fiercely. From the beginning to the end, Yiqing Luo had her arms crossed over her chest as she watched coldly from the sidelines. Approximately half the time it took for an incense stick to burn. Leng Fengying slowly stopped his painful howls. He fell onto the ground as he hugged his head and twisted body, slowly relaxing by quite a bit. He panted heavily as he held his head, as he slowly raised his head. What entered his eyes was a young lady dressed in red. Her flames were like fire, as though she was a fairy from the ninth heavens. Chapter 1946. The young lady in front of him and the figure in his memories slowly overlapped. Leng Fengying's pupils contracted as the hand which was supporting his head stiffened. His thin lips trembled as his hoarse voice suddenly rang, Yiqing Luo, it's you, it's you? Yiqing Luo's lips curled up in ridicule, sober up? He was stunned as he smelled the thick alcohol stench on him as a sliver of embarrassment surfaced on his face. He frantically climbed up from the ground as he patted his wrinkled robes. He recalled. Not long ago, Yiqing Qian used a forceful attitude to ask for the West Continent's tiger talisman from his hands. And she used such humiliating words to humiliate him. But there was nothing he could do. As a crown prince, there was nothing he could do. He didn't even have the right to walk out of this luxurious palace. He only wanted to use wine to numb himself. Only when he was drunk, so drunk that he had no consciousness. So that he wouldn't recall his useless side. After that. Then he seemed to have seen a fairy. The fairy gave him a pill and he. Leng Fengying suddenly regained his senses. Earlier what you fed me was a sobering pill? Otherwise what did you think it was? Yiqing Luo's brows rose. Poison? You don't have the right to poison me now. Leng Fengying pursed his lips as his eyes shot out anger, but he clenched his fists tightly as he suppressed it deep down in his heart. Yes, based on Yiqing Luo's current status. If she wanted to kill him, it would just be a matter of minutes. You're looking for me because you want me to do something for you? Leng Fengying didn't beat around the bush. He was very curious. Now that the entire West Continent was already in Yiqing Qian's hands, what other ways did Yiqing Luo have to reverse this ending? Yiqing Luo's lips curled as her eyes smiled calmly, not for me, but for yourself. Leng Fengying's expression turned cold. Yiqing Luo continued to smile. Don't tell me you're willing to let that woman who almost became your wife control your life and death. Are you really willing to hand over the West Continent's imperial court? She paused for a moment as her smile became even more ostentatious. Leng Fengying, your ambition will not allow you to be willing. As though what he was thinking in his heart was poked. Leng Fengying's fists were clenched tightly. His body was taut, and his muscles were clearly defined. Yiqing Luo saw his most direct reaction change and her brows rose frivolously as she asked, how is it, do you need my help? The corners of Tang Beiyuan's mouth twitched. As expected of the future mistress of their imperial palace. He really wasn't willing to suffer any losses. She took the initiative to look for Leng Fengying. No matter what, Leng Fengying should be the one to help her with this matter. In this way, after the matter was settled, Yiqing Luo would owe Leng Fengying a favor. but under Yi Qing Luo's few words. Hence it became Leng Fongying who needed Yi Qing Luo's help. The person who owed him a favor had evolved into Leng Fongying. The future mistress and Di Zun were a perfect match. Not only was Tang Beiyuan's lips twitching, even Leng Fongying's gaze towards Yi Qing Luo was filled with speechlessness. Perhaps he already knew Yi Qing Luo's character. Leng Fongying didn't want to argue with Yi Qing Luo over this meaningless favor. "What do you want me to do?" The expression on his face was no longer as dejected as before. Yi Qing Luo's eyes were filled with admiration. This Leng Fongying was indeed much smarter than Leng Fonghua. If it was Leng Fonghua, he would probably blame today's downfall on her. For example, it was because of her that he gave up on Yi Qingqian, causing Yi Qingqian to come back for revenge. However, Leng Fongying quickly adjusted his mentality. He also quickly understood which choice he should make was the most correct choice. Star. Chapter 1947. This Leng Fongying was indeed more suitable for the position of monarch than Leng Fonghua. She curled her lips into a sweet smile. If you still have the will to fight, it means that you can still be saved. Yi Qing Luo's eyes were long and narrow as she smiled bewitchingly. "I need your identity as the crown prince." A malicious glint flashed past Leng Fongying's gentle brows. He raised his head, his eyes flashing. "All right, as long as you can help me take back the empire of the West Continent, I will do my best to satisfy your request." The horizon was pitch black. The atmosphere was gloomy and eerie. West Billow Square. Thousands of commoners were gathered in a circle. There were 3 inner layers and 3 outer layers, surrounding the West Billow Square. The faces of the commoners were filled with solemnity and suppressed anger. However, they could only stand where they were, unable to act rashly. Most of these commoners were unwilling to stand here. And he was forced by Yi Qingqian to stand here and wait till midnight to start the massacre. Only a small part of the people are here because those who are tied to the altar in the square are the young and old of the Mu family. The Mu family had always practiced medicine to help the people, so they would not charge fees randomly. What's more, if they encountered a poor family, they would even receive free medical treatment. Most of the people in Shilin Square have been treated by the Mu family. Right now, the entire Mu family, old and young, was tied to the sacrificial altar. Once the midnight hour passed, they would slaughter the entire family. The commoners' hearts were filled with rage towards Yi Qingqian and the others' cruelty. But what he hated the most was that Yi Qing Luo who had yet to appear. Yi Qingqian sat majestically by the side of the altar, lying on the luxurious and comfortable recliner. Her posture was elegant, and she didn't care about how the people around her looked at her. Yi Qingqian felt that she was extremely foolish in the past. For the sake of a false reputation, she pretended to be a gentle, virtuous, elegant, and generous young lady. They lived such a tiring life, but in the end, they still couldn't get anything good. It would be better to be like this. Below one person, above tens of thousands. She could do whatever she wanted to do without any scruples. Anyway, she had her own backer. She had nothing to fear. This was a place where the strong were respected and strength was supreme. She just needed to be strong. Look, now, how colorful her life was. Everyone was afraid of her, afraid of her. She could summon clouds and rain with a flip of her hand. She could control the royal family if she wanted to. If he wanted to destroy the Three Springs sect, he could destroy the Three Springs sect. The entire Western continent was already under her control. This was the life she, Yi Qingqian, wanted. This was the life that she, Yi Qingqian, had always been yearning for. As long as Yi Qing Luo was destroyed. Destroy that Yi Qing Luo who had ruined her life right from the start. Her life would truly be complete. What time is it? Yi Qingqian raised her gorgeous brows and asked coldly. They had been sitting in the West Square for an entire afternoon and Yi Qingluo's shadow was nowhere to be seen. Yi Qingqian was getting impatient. The maidservant who stood respectfully at the side answered timidly, replying to eldest miss, "It's already 9 in the evening." "Hi sure." Yi Qingqian squinted her gorgeous eyes and muttered softly, "It's almost midnight, does that slut Yi Qingluo not intend to appear?" She stood up slowly. Her blue flowery skirt shone with a dazzling brilliance. Her movements were like flowing water. It made Yi Qingqian look even more alluring. Even though everyone was extremely resentful towards this vicious woman. But they had no choice but to admit it. Yi Qingqian, the former #1 beauty in Three Springs sect, really lived up to her reputation. That temperament, that looks. She was really unparalleled in beauty. Star. Chapter 1948. Hey Ji. Yi Qingqian called out coldly and arrogantly. Hey Ji walked out from the side of the chair and bowed respectfully as she looked at Yi Qingqian. Hey Ji was the maid that the Wolf Saint Dharma had arranged to serve Yi Qingqian after she entered the dark forces. "Let the night watch, the entire Three Springs city will sound the gongs, we must force Yi Qingluo out." Yi Qingqian's lips were smiling but it seemed extremely cold. She had a delicate face and a captivating gaze. Hey Ji's heart couldn't help but be tempted by Yi Qingqian's looks. She had been following Yi Qingqian and knew her changes better than anyone else. She looked at Yi Qingqian, from the original gentle and lovely person, slowly following the Wolf Saint Dharma's request, completely transforming herself into. Just like her name in the dark forces. Fox Protector. A seductive and alluring demon fox. The current Yi Qingqian was indeed a vixen. Yi Qingqian's backing was the Wolf Saint Dharma. She relied on the Wolf Saint Dharma to survive. And because of this, bit by bit, she transformed herself into the image that the Wolf Saint Dharma liked. Although Yi Qingqian had long given up her ego for power. Hey Ji had to admit. This Yi Qingqian was even more dazzling than the previous Yi Qingqian. Hearing Yi Qingqian's command, Hey Ji nodded obediently as she bowed and retreated from the altar. Not long later, the surroundings were filled with extremely loud gongs. There were almost 20 over gongs. They were forced by the group of forces controlled by Yi Qingqian to scurry around the city. The gongs in her hands were banging loudly. Shouts were heard one after another, 11 o'clock, 11 o'clock, it's almost midnight, midnight has arrived. Listening to the incessant sounds of the night watch. Mu family's patriarch Mu Zhao revealed a sullen expression as he stared at the demon fox lady and gritted his teeth, Yi Qingqian. Do you know that the dark forces had long been annihilated by the imperial palace and had long become the remnants of Nirvana realm and various continents? How dare you collude with the dark forces? Others couldn't tell where this bunch of powerful cultivators came from. Mu Lai was very clear about this. His two sons were extremely attentive towards the previous young matriarch of Three Springs sect. As a result, every day when they were eating, they would hear about Yi Qingluo's matters. With regards to those shocking things that Yi Qingluo had done before. Mu Lai knew everything clearly. Naturally they understood that the power which Yi Qingqian relied on was the dark forces. Mu Lai was extremely disdainful of this. Huh? Yi Qingqian proudly raised her eyebrows as she walked towards Mu Lai, pursue and kill surviving members? But Patriarch Mu, this young miss has been in control of the Western continent for a full 3 days. I have tied you, a kind person who is like a bodhisattva, to the altar for several hours. Why haven't the people of the other continents appeared? She covered her mouth and laughed scornfully. How could those cowardly people sacrifice their own strength for someone else's territory? Patriarch Mu, just give up. Traitor. You traitor of the West continent. Mu Xiao, the old master of the Mu family, was so angry that his white beard flew up. The Mu family had always been loyal. They had never met such a shameless person. Most of the people present knew about Yi Qingqian's identity. He was a fickle and evil person with a vicious heart. Back then, the Three Springs sect spared her life for the sake of her family. But they had not expected Yi Qingqian to take revenge on them. No one would think that Yi Qingqian's revenge was right. Star. Chapter 1949. Back then Yi Qingqian's actions, even if it took her life, it was a matter of course. Yi Qingqian would be kicked out of Three Springs sect. She had reaped the consequences of her own actions and could not blame anyone else. Grandpa Mu, I advise you to save your strength. Yi Qingqian's lips curled into an arrogant smile as she raised her brows towards Mu Xiao. Why don't you plead in your heart that the little slut whom you're protecting wholeheartedly will appear at midnight? After a pause, she clicked her tongue and said, however, that little bitch is very hard-hearted. For someone like you who has no interaction with her at all, I don't think she would come to her death just for you. Saying that, Yi Qingqian sighed regretfully, actually, I don't want to treat you like this. After all, we dark forces need Mu family's medical skills. What a pity. My target was originally the Yi clan's 8th young master and that slut servant girl. Who asked your Mu clan's 2 young masters to take my target away? Yi Qingqian's motive was extremely simple. Not only did she want to brainwash everyone in the Mu family, but she also wanted to brainwash the people who were watching. Everything was because of Yi Qingluo. From the start till the end, her gaze was only on Yi Qingluo. The fact that they would capture the Mu family was only because they were forced into a corner. She wanted to stir up everyone's disgust and hatred towards Yi Qingluo. However, Yi Qingqian's plan was destined to fail. Yi Qingqian. Do you think everyone is as cold-blooded and heartless as you? My 2 sons are doing well. It was right to save them. Our Mu family is dead. I have a clear conscience. The one who spoke was the mother of the Mu brothers, Mu Lai's only wife, Shui Feishue. Her words were immediately echoed by everyone in the Mu family. Death was inevitable in one's life. They were not afraid of death. On the contrary, they felt that the young master of the Yi family had made the right choice. And when it was midnight, Yi Qingluo didn't rush to the West Lawn Public Square to take the risk, which was the right choice. If they came, they would really be sending themselves to their deaths. In the end, not only Yi Qingluo died. Their Mu family would not be able to escape this calamity either. It would be better to sacrifice the Mu family now, in exchange for a chance for those young people to survive. Presumably, the affectionate and righteous woman mentioned by the 2 boys would treat the 2 boys well on account of the Mu family's sacrifice today. He looked at the Mu family with a fearless expression. Yi Qingqian's smile froze on her lips. Soon after, his expression gradually became somewhat distorted. On what basis? No matter where Yi Qingluo went, there would be people who would die for her wholeheartedly. It was obvious that the entire Mu family and Yi Qingluo had no interaction at all. As for her, even if she resorted to unscrupulous means, she would not be able to obtain the sincerity that belonged to her. Whether it was in the past or now. She had never had any sincerity. On the surface, the wolf saint technique looked like he doted on her, loved her, and doted on her. But Yi Qingqian herself was very clear. The holy wolf did not love her sincerely at all. She didn't know why the wolf saint technique would treat her so well, so much so that just by looking at her, he would be moved. But Yi Qingqian could feel it. The holy wolf technique's heart was not with her. Yi Qingqian laughed softly. There was a tinge of bitterness in her laughter. You're really the kindest person in the West Lawn continent. This miss would like to see how hard you can be for that slut. As though it was to vent the bitterness in her heart. Chapter 1950. Yi Qing Qian. Mu Lai roared as his face was filled with rage. He kept struggling to get up, but the iron chains on his body didn't allow him to break free. The Mu family were all fed with the supreme profound medicine soup. Unable to use their profound energy, they had no way to resist. Mu Lai's eyes were red as he gritted his teeth and stared at Yi Qing Qian. "Come at me if you have the ability." The wife he loved dearly in the palm of his hand. The wife who usually couldn't bear to raise her voice. But she was slapped in front of his eyes. How could he tolerate this? Looking at Mu Lai's furious look, Yi Qing Qian's heart finally felt a sense of pleasure. She giggled as she walked towards Shui Fei Shui, who was sent flying on the ground. Her gorgeous face revealed a vicious sneer. "What's the point of coming at you? It's more interesting if I hit her and you feel heartache." She leaned over and grabbed Shui Fei Shui's hair. She lifted Shui Fei Shui up harshly. Shui Fei Shui had been in the pugilistic world, and even after many years of marriage, the pugilistic world spirit was still there. Even if her scalp was in pain, she didn't make a sound. Mu Lai clenched his teeth as his eyes turned red. He struggled with all his might, wanting to rush up and tear Yi Qing Qian into pieces. But no matter how hard he tried, his hands and body were still bleeding from the friction of the chains. There was no way he could escape from the iron chains. The onlookers stared at this scene. Their hearts were burning with rage, but there was nothing they could do. Previously there was a cultivator who had been saved by the Mu family who wanted to save the Mu family. But before he got close to the altar, he was cut into pieces by that lady who looked like a demon fox. It was really 1,000 cuts. Not one more cut, not one less cut. Right on the West Square, in front of thousands of people. The methods were bloody and cruel, leaving a shadow in everyone's mind. She wanted to save the Mu family. But she was afraid of the consequences. Mu Lai's actions obviously made Yi Qing Qian happy. Her 5 fingers clasped Shui Fei Shui's chin as she looked down at the woman who was obviously in her 30s, but still young and beautiful. It's said that a man loves a woman only because of her good looks. I really want to prove this saying. Yi Qing Qian's lips curled into a sinister smile. "Madam Mu, say. If I were to leave a few scars on your face, would your husband still regard you as his life?" Shui Fei Shui sneered and spat on her face. "Go ahead and try." Yi Qing Qian's eyes were filled with coldness. She suddenly tightened her grip. Shui Fei Shui's face turned pale. The sharp pain in her lower jaw made her sweat profusely. Yi Qing Qian raised her other hand and wiped the saliva off her face. Suddenly, he took out a dagger from somewhere and placed it on Shui Fei Shui's face. "I'll fulfill your wish. Yi Qing Qian. How dare you? Don't you dare touch her. I will never let you off." Perhaps it was because of his rage, Mu Lai broke free from the shackles of the chains. His hands and the places where the chains were entangled were covered in blood. He didn't mind as he pounced in front of Yi Qing Qian and pushed her away fiercely. Yi Qing Qian had not expected the Mu family to break free from the chains. She couldn't react in time and was hit by Mu Lai. Yi Qing Qian fell onto the ground. And because of this collision, Mu Lai hugged Shui Fei Shui and fell onto the ground. The supreme profound medicine in his body had long expelled his profound energy and strength out of his body. After Mu Lai fell onto the ground, he no longer had any strength. The guards at the side saw that something had happened to Yi Qing Qian and rushed forward to surround the altar. Yi Qing Qian got up with the help of the maid. Her sinister eyes looked coldly at the man and woman who were hugging each other tightly. The flames burning in her eyes became more and more vigorous. "What a pair of lovers, I'll fulfill the affection between you. After midnight, I'll be the first to deal with the two of you." Yi Qing Qian strode to the side of Mu Lai and his wife and looked down at them condescendingly. "Now, I'll teach you what a well-behaved and sensible captive is." Star. Chapter 1951. A pair of lovers? Ha! Her biggest hobby now was to break up lovers and torture lovers. To see two people who loved each other unable to be together. The flames in Yiqing Qian's eyes were filled with a horrifying madness. She flipped her palm and a long whip which was flickering with profound yin qi appeared in her palm. Yiqing Qian squinted her beautiful eyes as her lips curled into a sneer. After instructing the night watch, He Ji who was returning to the altar looked at that long whip and her heart suddenly trembled. This long whip was the cursed magic weapon that Wolf Saint Dharma had gifted to Yiqing Qian, Dark Illusion Whip. This was one of the dark magic weapons. Compared to those so-called divine artifacts, its power could only be greater. Moreover, it had the ability to devour curses and darkness. Yiqing Qian rarely took out the Dark Illusion Whip. It could be seen that Yiqing Qian was really angry. He Ji suppressed the uneasiness in her heart as she lowered her head and returned to the reclining chair. Mu Lai saw the profound yin qi lingering on that long whip and his expression suddenly changed. He was from the Mu family, which was one of the four great families. Even if he couldn't tell what kind of magic weapon it was. But he was very clear in his heart. Once they were hit by the magic weapon. They were human shells without any profound qi. They were unable to withstand the magic power of the magic weapon. What's more, there was a possibility that their souls would scatter. Mu Lai used the last of his strength to block Shui Fei Shui behind him. A pair of red eyes stared at Yiqing Qian resentfully. Yiqing Qian. My son cares about his mother the most. If you do anything to Fei Shui, don't even think of using us to force Yiqing Luo out. Finally anxious? Yiqing Qian laughed crazily. The long whip in her hand was like a poisonous snake as she looked ahead vigilantly, waiting for the opportunity to move. On the account that you are so protective of your wife, I will satisfy you. Her words just ended. Suddenly the long whip shook. Everyone saw a long whip which looked like a black poisonous snake flying straight over. That long whip was close to Mu Lai at the moment. Suddenly a burst of profound yin qi was set off. Bam! The long whip lashed on Mu Lai's face, leaving a bloody mark. The blood was mixed with black mysterious yin qi, which was corroding his wounds. Mu Lai's body fell heavily to the ground. Xiao! There was another sound of the whip tearing through the air. Shui Feishue's body was swept up by the long whip and thrown into the air. Yiqing Qian's hand that was holding onto the long whip suddenly gave it a tug. Shui Feishue fell heavily from the sky. With the pull of the long whip. Their falling speed was also extremely fast. Boom! With a loud thud, the entire altar was smashed into a huge pit. Crushed stones flew everywhere, and smoke and dust rose in spirals, covering everything on the altar. Mu Lai struggled to get up and shouted at the top of his lungs, "Flying snow! Flying snow!" With every shout, he coughed out a mouthful of blood. When the old and young of the Mu family saw this, all of them were so infuriated that green veins popped out, wishing that they could break free from the iron chains and rush up to kill Yiqing Qian. That height. That kind of strength. How could an ordinary person without any Xian Qi withstand it? Moreover, the altar had collapsed. Shui Feishue was afraid. Everyone's mood suddenly became heavy. Eldest young miss. Eldest young miss. Just as the atmosphere was inexplicably oppressive, the anger in the hearts of the people was also provoked and could not be tolerated. On the altar, a panicked voice suddenly sounded, "You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."